Can I just test the teleprompter and the volume? Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Everybody here okay?
Okay, folks, it is 8:30, and so we are getting ready to live stream. Thank you very much. To the National Social Mobility Symposium. Please welcome to the podium our Emcee, Trustee Wenda Fong.
Good morning and welcome to the 2026 National Social Mobility Symposium hosted by California State University, San Marcos. Whether you're tuning in online or here as part of our live studio audience, we are so happy you are joining us. My name is Wenda Fong, a proud member of the California State University Board of Trustees since 2018 and its immediate past chair. And it is truly my honor to return as the Emcee of the National Social Mobility Symposium. We know there are higher education leaders, friends, and supporters from all over the country watching this morning. So for those of you unfamiliar with the California State University, we are the nation's largest and most diverse four-year public university system with 22 universities providing an affordable, high-quality education, serving more than 470,000 students across every region of our state. In recent years, one of those universities, Cal State San Marcos, located here in San Diego County, has hosted this important convening, both online and on campus, leading this national conversation. Given today's hybrid format, I want to ask our audience to please be patient with us during our transitions between sessions. We will do our very best to make the program as seamless as possible for all of you. But no matter the format, I am always thrilled to have this opportunity to be with so many like-minded individuals, those who are truly passionate about serving students and ensuring that their educational and professional dreams come true. We've got a lot packed in today's agenda for you, but before we get started, an important practice the CSU's culture is to start events such as this with an acknowledgement of the original nations on whose land we live, learn, and work. Please take a moment to watch this video.
We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Luiseño Payam people. Today, the meeting place of Cal State University San Marcos and its surrounding areas is still home to the 6 federally recognized bands of the Luiseño Payam people: La Jolla, Pala, Pama, Pachanga, Rincon, and Saboba.
It is also important to recognize that this land remains a shared space among Cupangwichom, Capeño, Kumeyaay, and Ipai peoples.
CSUSM values its long-standing mutually beneficial relationships with the tribal communities in San Diego County, which is home to 18 federally recognized reservations, more than any other county in the United States, and over 30 tribal nations in the region.
Recognizing the land is a profound act of gratitude and respect for the original stewards of these homelands, those who have lived, worked, and thrived here since time immemorial. It is not just a gesture, it is a vital acknowledgement of Indigenous presence and resilience.
By naming the tribal nations and honoring their enduring connection to the land, we create opportunities for learning and reflection, especially for those who may be hearing these names for the first time.
This recognition invites a deeper understanding of the history, culture, and ongoing contributions of Indigenous communities to the lands we share.
I hope you take this opportunity to learn more about the local Indigenous people of this region during your time here. Welcome to CSUSM.
Thank you. I also want to take a few moments to thank our symposium sponsors. They are the very reason this symposium is available to anyone who wants to attend free of charge. First, our Catalyst sponsors, the Stone Brewing Fund for Social Mobility at CSUSM. North City, a unique public-private partner in the physical growth of Cal State San Marcos and the development of the surrounding area. And Sodexo, catering and dining services, proud partner supporting many CSU-SM events like this one. We also have two advocate sponsors, College Futures Foundation and Strada Education Foundation. Again, thank you to all of our wonderful sponsors. We are so happy that all of you have joined us today, and we can't wait to dive deeply into the role we all play in student success and student social mobility. As our time together unfolds, we invite you to share your thoughts, insights, posts, and photos on social media. Please join the conversation using Symposium's hashtag Social Mobility 2026. Our host campus, Cal State San Marcos, is well recognized as a national leader in social mobility. In fact, in 2022, the university was ranked first in the nation among 1,400 colleges and universities, and on the CollegeNet Social Mobility Index in 2025 was ranked #1 in the nation once again. Congratulations! Through this work, I have had the opportunity to learn from many of you as well. As you are leading social mobility efforts from where you are, whether at CUNY in New York, to Wisconsin in the Midwest, to Georgia in the South, Texas in the Southwest, and of course, right here in California. I am so proud as a trustee of the California State University system that collectively the CSU system is our nation's greatest driver of social mobility. Yes, that deserves applause. Each year, we award more than 123,000 degrees, adding to our growing global network of 4.5 million proud alumni. That's an alumni base that exceeds the population of 24 U.S. states. Here in California, 1 in 10 employees is a Cal State graduate. Pretty remarkable, right? And in fact, 1 out of every 20 college graduates nationwide earn their degree from the CSU. It is our highest mission to provide students of all backgrounds, races, ethnicities, abilities, identities, and orientations the opportunity to earn the lifelong benefits of a high-quality degree leading to advanced study and careers of the future. This mission and these values have never been more essential, and it is wonderful to connect with all of you, our colleagues and friends who are moving higher education in this country forward with hope and resolve. Today's world requires higher education to prepare students for a society of rapid change in technology, in increasing interconnectedness, and in the jobs of tomorrow that may not even exist today. I know that here at Cal State San Marcos, just as at our other 21 CSU universities, students have access not only to state-of-the-art facilities and world-class faculty and staff, but also to outstanding research opportunities, internships, and service learning experiences, all of which contribute to the transformative power of a high-quality education. Every day, as a trustee on the CSU Board of Trustees, I witness that power firsthand. And I know I'm not alone. Each of us here and those joining us online likely carries a personal story or a family legacy of striving for social mobility in our great country. It certainly is a defining through line of my own family's history. So I look forward to listening and learning alongside all of you. We must listen and learn so that we can continue to be innovative and creative in our strategies to ensure that all students, no matter their identity or background, feel not only welcomed, but supported in achieving their dreams. That's why we are here today. And that's what we will do together. In doing so, we support the social mobility of entire families, communities, our state, and our nation. There is nothing more important than that. This is a passion that is shared by all of us, including and perhaps most especially by Dr. Ellen Neufeldt. Since becoming the 4th president of Cal State San Marcos in July 2019, Dr. Neufeldt has been firmly committed to ensuring that Cal State San Marcos is an inclusive, accessible, and welcoming home to all. The university's strategic plan, The Power of CSU San Marcos, places student success and social mobility at the center of its institutional mission and vision, underscoring her commitment to CSUSM's role in cultivating partnerships that create opportunities for students and enrich surrounding communities. Dr. Neufeldt serves on the board of the San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation and as the chair of the Coalition of Urban and Metropolitan Universities. In addition, she was named the recipient of the 2025 National President's Award from NASPA and was also awarded a 2025 Lead San Diego Visionary Award for Innovation and Economic Opportunity. Please join me in welcoming to the podium the national trailblazer in social mobility and our gracious host, Cal State San Marcos President, Dr. Ellen Neufeldt.
Oh, thank you, Chair Fong. Trustee Fong. It is so wonderful to have you as part of this journey, and you just mean so much to me, but so much to all of the students that you just showed that graduate from Cal State. So just thrilled to be with everybody this morning, and welcome to the 2026 National Social Mobility Symposium. It is truly an honor to be with so many people who have committed their careers, their scholarship, and their leadership to one of the most vital imperatives facing higher education today. How do we ensure that higher education truly delivers on its promise of social and economic mobility for all students? And at a moment when higher education is being questioned, scrutinized, and in some cases openly challenged, your presence matters. This work matters. You know, most of us are only here today because higher education played a defining role in our journey of social mobility. As I reflect on the humble beginnings of these symposiums almost a decade ago, I do remember how small those first gatherings were, and really how unfamiliar the concept of social mobility was to many. Today, hundreds of colleagues come together for this symposium each year with a shared commitment to advancing social mobility in higher education. And yet, as the term has become more widely used, I do worry that it's becoming a buzzword. And all of us must work together to ensure it's operationalized with intentional practices, policies, and outcomes that drive real change. Because we know higher education was originally built to exclude and to measure quality based on student inputs rather than outputs, and for centuries has contributed to the socioeconomic divide. I know in my core that together we will change what higher education should and must become, a place where those who have not always been invited in are welcomed and supported. And this requires systemic change at every level, from the state to the federal, and a willingness to redesign institutions that were not originally built to be inclusive or accessible. You know, I'm reminded of this very recently in an extremely personal way. This past November, I attended ASCU in Nashville. And for those of you that don't know, I was back in Tennessee. That brought back many memories because my family lived there. My father was a faculty member and my mother an amazing staff member at Tennessee Tech. And during a break at Askew, a man introduced himself to me, and his name was Dr. Charles Long, and he's a leader in Apple's higher education division. And he asked if I was Ellen Neufeldt. But then he asked something I don't usually hear at a conference. Was your father Harvey Neufeldt? And I wasn't quite sure where he was going. I was assuming we weren't talking about Apple products at that moment. And he told me something I really never expected, that my father had changed his life. And he shared that he was a first-generation college student from rural East Tennessee who began a community college before transferring to Tennessee Tech, where he took a class with my dad, who had a profound impact on him. Charles went on to earn a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and eventually his doctorate within a program that my father helped design. But later, he was recruited by Apple to become their very first higher education representative. Individually and collectively, higher education had completely changed the course of Charles's life and career. I sort of hope he's listening today. And he remembered that my father was a key part of enabling his social mobility journey. My father's not alive any longer, but his legacy of social mobility continues on in Charles and many others. And that moment brought me back to the work I see every day on my campus with the wonderful people at Cal State San Marcos and so many others that all of you on this webinar represent. It reinforced for me why we must continue to ensure that higher education remains accessible, not just to enter, but to persist, graduate, and thrive, especially for those who have generationally been denied opportunity, not only to degrees, but careers, graduate school, and improved quality of life with ripple effects that extend far beyond themselves. Social mobility is a moral imperative, but it's also a pragmatic one. As we face demographic cliffs and shrinking pipeline of traditional college-age students, expanding opportunity isn't just the right thing to do. It is an economic necessity for our communities, regions, and nation. And while preparing students for jobs matters, it is just as important to recognize that our graduates will create the workforce and careers of the future. It really heartens me to know that I get to be a part of a community of people that are doing this amazing work, along with all of you and the amazing people right here at CSUSM. This is a way of paying it forward, just like Amy Barrera is doing for the students right here at Cal State San Marcos. She is a double alumna. Growing up in Mira Loma, a rural community in Riverside County, California, Amy shared that college wasn't not something people imagined for themselves. But through Upward Bound, Amy learned for the first time that higher education was possible. And at CSUSM, she found a web of support that mattered, from an alumni scholarship to support programs to the classroom. It was about the faculty and staff who recognized her potential and invested in her success. Dr. Christina Hullab mentored Amy through hands-on research and paid work experience. She presented alongside her at an NIH conference, winning first place for research on health disparities affecting Native, Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and Latino communities. Today, Amy works in higher education and is pursuing a doctorate in public health. And in a powerful full circle moment, she recently established a $10,000 scholarship for CSUSM public health students, ensuring that future generations will have access to the same support, validation, and opportunity that she received. You know, just like Charles Long, Amy's social mobility journey comes back to the support of all the people at our institutions and the special connection to our faculty and staff members. Amy's and Charles's stories illustrate how intentional institutions do more than help students earn degrees. They create lasting pathways for social mobility across generations. We know that in achieving social and economic mobility, it's about the entire student life cycle, from that very first point of contact all the way to what happens after graduation. And today's symposium is going to focus on positioning students for post-degree success. And we will begin our conversation with research from Strada Education Foundation on how work-based learning improves career success. We will then hear from national experts examining the future of workforce and economic mobility and what higher education must do to keep pace. And finally, we will conclude with probably a pretty raucous presidential panel on what it truly means to make social mobility a core institutional strategy. Together, these conversations reflect the purpose of this symposium, to ensure higher education delivers on its promise. This symposium represents the next evolution of our work as we think about how to elevate and scale this work nationally. Over the coming year, Cal State San Marcos, alongside the entire CSU, will take an important next step on leading this journey. You know I like to tease. So be on the lookout for an exciting announcement. And for now, I'll just say there is so much more to come. So for today, let's ask, where do we go from here? We lead from where we are, and we keep asking the harder questions. Who's being left out? What systems are maintaining out of habit rather than purpose? What would it look like to redesign higher education for the students that we actually serve? Because social mobility is not just good for individuals. It is essential for our workforce, our economy, and our democracy. And at a time of demographic decline and global competition, we can't afford to leave talent on the sidelines. Because you and I both know, all of us, talent may be distributed equally, but opportunity is not. So together, we're going to change that. I do thank you for joining us, and I thank you for your leadership. I thank you for your commitment to making higher education a true engine of social mobility. And I know that starts with visionary leadership. And one of the great things about being a part of the CSU is I get to work with an amazing visionary leader working to lead us forward in this work in the CSU. And it is my great pleasure to introduce that leader of the nation's largest and most diverse four-year public university system. Dr. Mildren García began her tenure as California State University's 11th chancellor on October 1st, 2023, as the first ever Latina to lead the CSU. Prior to her appointment, Chancellor García served as the president of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, where she was a strong and internationally renowned advocate for public higher education on behalf of 350 member colleges and universities. She was appointed by President Barack Obama to serve on several advisory boards, including the President's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for Hispanics, and by the U.S. Secretary of Education to serve on the Committee on Measures of Student Success. And more recently, and in addition to a myriad of other honors and awards, Chancellor García was inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Now, all of you know I could go on, but it's the moment. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the podium CSU Chancellor Dr. Mildren García.
Thank you, Ellen. Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias. Once again, thank you, President Neufeldt, for your kind introductions and for being such a gracious host. Thank you also for your leadership, not just here at San Marcos and across the CSU, but as a nationally respected champion of social mobility. I am so honored once again to join all of you, those of you here in person and the many on live stream, for the National Social Mobility Symposium. You know, this is my third time delivering this address. I think it is fitting that in the fall of 2023, this consequential event marked my very first public remarks as the CSU's chancellor. I said then, and it remains true today, social mobility is not only my personal story, it is my professional life's greatest responsibility and the through line of my career in higher education. It is my why. This convening is so critically important for centering us all on our why. Why do we do this challenging work day in and day out? To meet our students where they are, to remove barriers to their success, and to inspire and support them through and to graduation and into prosperous careers and ultimately meaningful and fulfilling lives. At the outset, I must acknowledge a stark truth. There's likely never been a more challenging time to work in public higher education. It certainly is for me. And I don't expect the headwinds to calm down anytime soon. And yet, I am filled with optimism, outrageous optimism for the future of public higher education and its enduring ability to transform lives. Here's why. Again and again, we hear that people are questioning the value of higher education. I don't buy that overgeneralization, and I don't want you to. People are not turning away from higher education. They're turning away from high costs and marginal outcomes. They're searching. They're searching for institutions like ours, ones that deliver value and real tangible returns on their tuition dollars and their time. They are searching for what we deliver. In my former role as president of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, it has been my great honor to visit so many of the campuses represented here today. And I've seen firsthand what we can deliver. You don't have to take my word for this undeniable truth, and just look at the national college rankings and the related media stories. We're seeing a clear movement away from the metrics traditionally used to identify America's so-called top colleges, metrics that, to be candid, have always infuriated me. It's exclusivity, prestige, and privilege. America is now turning to the metrics that matter: equitable access, inclusive excellence, and social mobility. Washington Monthly magazine, a pioneer in this movement, ranks the best bang for the buck schools in the West. Every single CSU made that list in 2025. Along with other high-impact institutions that share our values. Not only that, 10 CSUs placed in the top 30 of the best colleges for your tuition and tax dollars list, with 3 in the top 5 and 5 in the top 10, outranking many marquee private universities. And as for the ranking social mobility measures social mobility, the CSU has always dominated social mobility. And a special shout out again to President Neufeldt, where her and her team here at San Marcos for topping the Social Mobility Index again. Let's give her a round of applause, and her team. But the rankings, data, and metrics are really only important of what they reflect. They reflect the most important source of my outrageous optimism. Our students. It's our students. Their diversity, their intellect, their dreams, and their drive. Our students and thousands more regional public universities across the country have grit, ingenuity, and heart in so much abundance. They have the resolve to clear any hurdle and wrestle any challenge to the ground. They find a why. Take Cal State East Bay alumna Brittany Carkeefe, for example. In 2009, Brittany stepped away from college after just 1 year. She pivoted to cosmetology school, working as a forklift driver to pay the bills, and built a career as a hairdresser. but her childhood love of science never left her. She returned to the classroom through community college, transferred to East Bay in 2020, and graduated with a bachelor's degree in physics in 2023. With support from faculty mentors and the university's tight-knit physics community, Brittany was accepted into 7 PhD programs. Today, she's a PhD student at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, doing next-generation quantum research that could help power the future of computing. Brittany's story is the reason we are doubling down on a strategy to drive student success and student mobility. After the most comprehensive and collaborative system-level planning effort in the CSU, we have crafted a system-wide strategic plan to illuminate the path forward. In these turbulent times, I am sure that many of the other institutions represented here today are engaged in very similar work. The first objective of our plan is crystal clear: to strengthen the CSU as the premier engine for social and economic mobility. This means creating more flexible, career-integrated learning pathways so our students can progress into jobs with the upward momentum. The CSU Forward Plan also directs us to optimize financial resilience across our universities and enhance affordability, especially for students who were not born into wealth, privilege, and social capital. One such student is Sherry Higgs, who didn't think that college was meant for her. At 15, she entered the foster care system, became a single mother, and dropped out of high school. After earning her GE degree, she attended Butte College off and on, slowly piecing her education together until she completed her associate's degree. Then in 2020, she transferred to Chico State, majoring in public health with a minor in entrepreneurship. To help her cover her costs, Sherry joined the California College Corps and became deeply engaged on campus while holding down an internship at a local tech incubator. On top of all of that, she started her own small business. In 2023, Sherry graduated with her bachelor's and now works at Chico State as a sustainability coordinator for associated students and an advisor to the Black Student Union, inspiring and guiding those who aspire to follow her in her footsteps. That's right. These stories of resilience and determination capture something I see across the CSU every single day. Students overcoming formidable obstacles to not only graduate, but to flourish. Our plan CSU Forward also drives us to collectively amplify our statewide impact and strengthen connections to our regions and our communities. This includes engaging with our extensive alumni network to leverage their industry connections in ways that foster career-advancing relationships for our students. Consider Cal State Fullerton alumnus Raul Tapia, now a mentor for the Cal State DC Scholars Program. A distinguished attorney and entrepreneur in Washington, D.C., Raul has helped many CSU students connect with key networks during their DC-based internships in public policy and law. He's also a striking example of social mobility. The son of a seamstress and steel worker, he became the first in his family to earn a college degree. After graduating from Cal State Fullerton, he went on to earn graduate and law degrees from Harvard and later served as a White House staffer under President Jimmy Carter. This kind of upward mobility is what we envision for all our diverse and talented students. It's also why, in addition to our strategic plan, the CSU is building several other system-wide frameworks that translates our vision into real action. For example, our Student Success Framework drills down further into enhancing affordability, clarifying career pathways, supporting inclusive and real-world learning, and personalizing the student experience. And our Strategic Enrollment Management Framework will align financial aid, academic pathways, and data across the system. These efforts are all informed by the CSU Promise, our strategic plan that every CSU student will graduate with the opportunity for a first career job or a clear path to further study. It's our pledge to students like Brittany, Sherry, and Raul to illuminate pathways that expand their choices and lead to higher earnings and reach their dreams fulfilled. With these plans in place, our path is clear, not only to sustain our momentum, but to transform access for upward social mobility at scale. And please hear this. I'm not talking about incremental change. I am talking about setting a new standard. I am talking about making the CSU a national model for public higher education that is student-focused, student-ready, provides equity of opportunity and affordable access, and that delivers on our promise of social mobility, potential fulfilled, dreams realized, lives transformed. That is our promise. And this I know with absolute certainty, that at the CSU, we keep our promises. I wish you all the very best for what I know will be an inspiring and productive convening, and thank you for everything you do every day for our students and our why. Your extraordinarily skilled and mission-focused work has never been more important or more essential. I see it. I see you. I see all of you. And you are deeply appreciated for all that you do for the students we so love and serve. Thank you.
Thank you both, President Neufeldt and Chancellor García, for setting the tone and framing discussion for today and for always centering us on student success. Our next guest is Dr. Dave Clayton. Dr. Clayton is the Senior Vice President of Research for Strada Education Foundation. He and his team focus on understanding and developing evidence for solutions that improve the connections between education and opportunity. This work informs educators, policymakers, employers, thought leaders, and funders seeking to ensure the success of students well beyond completion of their credentials and degrees. Before I invite Dr. Clayton to the podium, I want to let our audience know that we will have a Q&A directly following his remarks, led by Dr. Berenecea Johnson-Eanes, President of Cal State Los Angeles. Please utilize the Q&A note cards on your table or the QR code in the webinar. So now, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Dave Clayton.
Thank you. I have been struck this morning as we have heard leaders speak about individual stories. We've not spoken about programs or funding or policy. All those are means to an end of those individuals, and how fortunate we are to have them as leaders and to have each of you as you focus on them. Well, I'm certain that each of you could think of a Harvey Neufeldt moment where you have changed the trajectory of someone's life. And I hope you will today, and I hope that what I share helps inform you. All of these resources are available online and detailed and cited in publications coming maybe the most important thing you can do is feel inspired and make notes of things you can do. As President Neufeldt indicated, we lift where we are and serve where we stand. My goal was to have more photos than bar charts in a research presentation. Hopefully we do well today. These photos actually come from campuses. One of my colleagues, Jason Johnson, goes when we visit campuses and takes individuals, and I went through our archive and selected individuals that I thought represented this work that each of you contribute to and lead. This focus of Strada Education Foundation is a national nonprofit, and thank you, Trustee Fong, for your kind introduction. And we focus on this connection between, in the intersection between education and opportunity, that promise that Chancellor García spoke so clearly and articulately of. We have a framework to organize and address such a complex and multifaceted program, effort, and goal. It has 5 components. It starts with quality coaching, education to career guidance that helps people connect their choices in that pathway that leads all the way through to lifelong success. It speaks to affordability, as you've articulated already today, that cost is not a barrier to accessing the quality in the pursuit of that opportunity and that individual's hopes and aspirations. It includes work-based learning, starting to blend that experience between what you're learning in your training in your classroom, your academic pursuits, and preparation for a running start to success in the world after graduation and completion. And then there are a couple things that we do because higher education tries to do it all. We are so dedicated and motivated and so committed. Think of the things we do beyond teaching in order for our students to succeed. We need employers to increasingly partner, advocate, support, and work at this same intersection. So we have a focus on employer alignment to ensure that, as President Neufeldt spoke to, those talent pipelines and regional workforces and communities and societies all see that they need to be committed to and invested in students. And then we work with states on their data infrastructure so that we really can track and understand and make sure we are seeing who is being left out and which pathways do need investment and support and how to ensure that promise is fulfilled for each. I want to speak with you today about one solution, work-based learning, at the invitation of all who prepared this. We've heard a lot about promise today, and it was quite interesting to me. We've conducted over 750,000 surveys about education work with every audience over the last decade, 8 years that I've been with Strada. And I would boil everything that I've heard about people's sentiments about education, higher education, into this line. People want the promise they can become anything, and they want the certainty they will become something. The promise is not dead. The hopes, the belief, the importance in that promise lives and is strong. The battleground is certainty that I won't be one of the 30% who don't earn enough to return on my investment to be better off than a high school graduate 10 years later. So it's not about averages and lifetime earnings. It's about me and my opportunity and my path and my certainty. And that's the calculus that individuals are going through, that balance of emotion and rational. We just finished a survey. We'll be publishing some things in the next couple months. But we asked high school students who are considering enrolling. We asked current students at public institutions. We asked the parents of those high school students and the parents of the college students. We asked adults who were considering returning to school, and we asked the general public questions about perceptions of higher education. College is extremely or very important for success in the future goals. For me, for my child, more than 8 in 10 articulate that. And certainly that is strong and powerful. What is not as strong is a belief in the value. The question I have seen in the 8 years of public that gives me the greatest discomfort and distress, when you ask individuals, are you more like Smith, who believes that colleges care more about making money than educating students? Or are you more like Jones, who believes that colleges care more about educating students than making money? Those high school students are 50-50. The parents of high school students and college students are 60 making money, 40 education. Those adults considering returning, 65 making money, 35 education. Current students at public institutions, 70% believe that universities and colleges care more about making money than educating students. 30% believe that they care more about education than making money. So we are in distress as a sector, and we know we need money as a means to an end, to serving and changing students. We can't let that undermine their hopes and their belief in the promise. What can we do to give them certainty that they will become something? Work-based learning is a powerful key and opportunity that provides tangible, pragmatic, I can see it, I can feel it, I can touch it, I can do it, evidence for them that we are committed to their success in their lives and those opportunities beyond their educational experience. Employers count on you. This is a survey that we just finished, nationally represented by industry sector and by size of companies, everyone from 5 employees to, as big as it gets. 8 in 10 employers believe graduates are well prepared. This is strongest for the bachelor's degree, stronger than associate, stronger than apprenticeship, stronger than non-degree credentials, stronger than other experiences. 8 in 10. 44% believe they are very well prepared. 36% somewhat. It's a landslide when it comes to employers, their belief in your ability to prepare students for their needs. When we ask how confident are you now than you were compared to 3 years ago, it's 49% have stayed the same, but 33% are now saying I'm more confident compared to 17% who are saying I'm less confident. So employers are tilting toward you and seeing your value and the necessity and importance of what you're doing. So again, the promise is not dead, as Chancellor García told us. How can we deliver on certainty to those individuals making choices about how and where to invest their hopes, their dreams, their resources, and their aspirations? We asked employers, how do you evaluate and consider recent graduates who are applying for entry-level positions requiring 3 years of experience or less? What matters most? 21% major. They weighted. It was 100 and you had to give points, right? 21 points to major, 15 points to your minor or your certification indicating you have competence. Those next 2, an internship or a college job. What did you do? How do you experience? What does that demonstrate? And then we go above that to how this reputation of the institution, the school that you went, do they know it? Extracurricular activities, volunteer activities, et cetera. But look at that. Yes, our academics matter, and they're at the core and the heart of that. And then if you want to break through in that job market, what was your applied experience? And and are you able to connect that and articulate it to your academic pursuits and to the value you have as an entering employee who's applying? We can help our students and our graduates do this. We know it, we see it. We can help them understand what they are becoming and what they have the power to become. From a student perspective, what do I want when it comes to work-based learning? 7 in 10 entering students say, I expect to complete an internship, student teaching, a practicum, something that is applied before I graduate. Will those students who do complete that work-based learning experience, 8 in 10 say that helped them feel that they were a stronger job candidate for the kind of job they want, right? They want it. When they get it, they feel strengthened and empowered and vitalized to go forward. And interestingly, and increasingly so, 70% of those who completed internships said they didn't seek the internship to explore and figure out what they liked and what they're good at. They were intentional in saying, I want experience that will prepare me for the job I want. It aligns very much with what employers are saying makes somebody stand out, right? GPA, but experience, indications that you're prepared to enter, be productive, contribute, and stick with it. We've looked at Strada and measured each state with the graduates of public institutions across 5 core immersive work-based learning experiences. We've chosen these because of the evidence base. I'll show you some others that we have, micro-internships and service learning and other things in a moment. But these 5, a paid internship, individuals who complete a paid internship, my colleague, Dr. Nicole Torpicebo, has done some work, longitudinal work with a baccalaureate and beyond study. And if you control for high school grades and standardized test scores and college GPA and field of study and major and race and ethnicity and gender and everything that's in those big data sets, and you compare the outcomes in the job market at 1 year and 4 years, individuals who had a paid internship earn 15% more. 5,000 the first year, 9,089 at year 4 in an annual salary. They're also 15% more likely to be in a job that requires a college degree. They're not underemployed. They're 15% more likely to be in a job that is a part of a career path, right? So that benefit alone, even when we control for everything else, that pulls through. When we look at paid apprenticeships, we know there are better employment outcomes and better wages. Paid co-ops, emerging research done by some colleagues that looks at a paid co-op has better earning outcomes than an unpaid co-op experience. So, and then paid practicum. Paid practicum, just like a paid internship, practicum overall without pay, we don't know about. But, well, practicum overall we know about pay and practicum we don't know. Practicum experiences have the same employment outcomes, that 12, 13% more likely to be in a job that requires their degree and more likely to be a part of a career. They don't have the income benefit, the earnings benefit. Now you think about student teachers or healthcare and nurses, everybody has to have those. So it's not a differential in the labor market to have that. So pay then becomes a piece of access. What are the opportunity costs for individuals? In the state of California, an individual needs to work, on average, across your institutions, needs to work 17 hours a week during the semester and full-time in the summer to pay their way through school. Taking a full load, more than 20 hours a week of work interferes with academic progress. Right? What are we asking people not to do if we're not paying them for these experiences? And so institutions and many are seeking solutions to this so that all can pursue and intentionally have these opportunities. This is what it looks like at a state level for graduates, individuals who graduate in 2025 at a public 4-year institution by state. We see some gray states. We didn't have enough data to give you a representative number, but you look at variation. So the gold, between 25 and 50% of those graduates in that state had one of those 5 paid immersive work-based learning experiences. In the striped, those are on the border. They're 49, 48, 51, 52. They're within the margin of error, and so they'll stay there until they clear that hurdle. The blue, Pennsylvania and Iowa, a couple states that are in the 60 percentile. So variation. Institutions in this survey varied between 8% of their graduates had a work in one of those 5 experiences and 78% of their graduates. Now, we'll look in a moment and see it varies tremendously by field of study. It varies by institutional resources and endowment. So you start to think about context around that, but this also shows us their opportunities. Now, what's happening in those states? Pennsylvania has figured out a way to pay stipends to student teachers and to pay stipends to faculty who supervise those student teachers in the public schools. Alabama has developed a model for nurse apprenticeships so that those nursing students can be paid in their clinical practicums. Colorado, North Carolina, New Jersey are pursuing those same models. So increasingly, policy is coming to provide opportunities for these high demand, high need careers that we need people to fill. 43% of graduates in 2025 had one of those 5 paid experiences. 29% had one of the experiences without pay, and 28% did not have one. As we think again about being intentional, not accepting the status quo, being directive and moving forward, how do we target those individuals, those who are least likely to have those experiences? If you look by field of study, right? Engineering interns or paid co-op or, right, 70% out of the 75% who had one of those immersive experiences. Education, 20%. We think of student teaching and those requirements and the burden that is on those students. How do we help people pursue careers? So we can do better than the status quo and the default as we're intentional in putting in. Speaking with one university, and they said, we don't let employers come and recruit for internships on our campus unless they commit to paid internships. And we will tell you how to set up an internship program. And we'll teach you if you're a small or medium employer and provide you toolkits and templates and models. And we'll train your supervisors so that you can do high quality internship experiences and connections. So institutions are working so hard to make this work for students, but we need people to understand the importance of investing in this, not just saying, well, employers have to supply more and give us more internship slots. What else can we do? Just a little bit to understand, again, this intentionality that we need. Women are 10% less likely to have a paid immersive work-based learning experience. That evaporates once you account for field of study. If you look at the difference of enrollment in those programs that had varied experiences. 9% of first-generation students are 9% less likely. That does not evaporate when you account for field of study or any other dimension. That's persistent and pervasive across each of those fields of pursuit. 13 students who are at a lower endowment, an endowment that's lower than the median. We used to talk about R1s. We changed the ACE Carnegie classification, so we look at institutional resources in this way, are 13% less likely to have a paid immersive work-based learning experience than those at institutions with higher resources. Again, how can we mobilize and work and contribute to creating solutions where these are opportunities for individuals who most need and will most benefit in that pursuit of social mobility? Now, as I said earlier, I stand amazed with the level of effort and responsibility and commitment that institutions, faculty, leaders, communities take to provide the solution on a campus. You don't wait around for somebody else to fix it. You do everything in your power. And so we see campuses and leaders working to innovate around campus employment. We have students working on campus. What can we do to create the value that an internship creates? We can pay them. How do we train supervisors? How do we train students? What do we do to make this a more valuable career advancing, career preparing experience? We talk about project-based learning, micro internships, work study, off-campus employment, service learning, all these dimensions that we put forward. How can we harness them and with not inventing something brand new, but with greater intentionality and efforts at the margins, increase the value to students in their preparation to go forward? When we ask students about those experiences, there were three things we asked about: the degree to which your experience helped you develop technical skills, the degree to which your experience helped you develop professional network, social capital, and the degree to which your experience helped you develop soft skills. Soft skills didn't correlate with their perceptions of the value of their work-based learning experience, but the degree to which they, a great deal versus not at all and anywhere in between, felt that they developed technical skills or social capital, greatly, highly correlated with a student's perception that this work-based learning experience helped prepare me for the kind of job I want. When we look across this spectrum of activities, I just want you to think about, so all you campus heroes who are building project-based learning into your courses, look what students said. Top of the list, right? Developed technical skills. That's not enough, but if you do that in the first or second year, and then you're prepared for an internship or an experience that helps you develop the social capital, and you're qualified to compete for and prepare and succeed in that. We talk about braiding and scaffolding and weaving these things together to what we can do early in order to prepare and position our students to believe in themselves, and also to bring the employer community into believing in them, and to working with intermediaries and others in our community partnerships to help facilitate success for individuals. All of these things can work together and are vital. Campuses are doing so many things. They're designing solutions we've talked about. We're advancing policies, building programs, invigorating curriculum. University of Montana reimagined their general ed with faculty senate approval, and created career champions across, and they have a toolkit to help faculty develop courses that include career elements in those first 2 years of education. The University of Minnesota College of Liberal Arts, right? They have required courses and curriculum embedded in those experiences as they go forward, all committed with this goal of transforming life. You're doing it. Those of you who are across the world, the nation today, joining us online are doing it. Wallace Stegner had a line about the Colorado Plateau, which is close to where I grew up. He said it's where you go to get your boots dirty and your soul clean. I have felt over my career that ASCU, our regional public universities, and this conference are places where I go to get my boots dirty and my soul clean. I feel inspired by the community that you are and that we are together. And I hope that this community can continue to thrive and grow as we make it visible and our pathway forward together to learn from one another. That's our goal in the State Opportunity Index, is not to rank anybody. We would like everybody to be at the top. We don't want better than average and lower than average and who's better or worse. So by holding out Iowa and Pennsylvania in work-based learning, we want people in Alabama and Mississippi and in Idaho to look and say, what are they doing and how would it work where I am? And similarly, you have that same opportunity as a community to be visible and to share so that you can learn from one another and share models. The other part of this is Strada is working strongly with states. In next month, there's a convening of state higher education executive officers through the National SHIA organization in Washington, D.C. 2 days, 25 to 30 states will be there, focused on education to career guidance and work-based learning at a state level. From there will be a group of 8 or 10 that pursue grants and an immersive 2-year experience to do that. But we want their solutions to be informed by your success. You're the ones who are innovating and know what will really work. And so rather than having things done to you by a state legislature, or inform them and help them see what works and develop. You're the engines of R&D, not just for the technology that fuels our economy, but for the solutions that fuel and support and sustain our students. As I conclude, some of the photos of individuals I thought about as we gathered today, and just this Teddy Roosevelt comment that echoes something we've heard already today. If we do what we can with what we have, where we are, with that intentionality of providing certainty to students that they can become anything and they will become something as they invest themselves and trust themselves with us in our stewardships. I hope these thoughts have been helpful to you. And again, the research resources are available, and I'm grateful to be with you. Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation on promise and certainty. I have some questions, and I'm going to move along as quickly as possible, okay? Good to see you. So what do you know about the timeline and the metric for the concept and context of certainty?
Yeah, so my training was not as a psychometrician, it was as a clinical psychologist. So certainty, what I see across the research is that people are looking for indications that there's something substantive and real. So every time you can talk about people who in this program on this campus are working at this employer where you want to live and work, people who came from your high school or your county, those are all proof points. Just as we heard stories today that were about possibilities, yes, the promise is there. Then when we can support data, whether it's entering students or selecting a field, or can I really get that internship? And could I really be competitive for that job? The closer we are to both numbers, but numbers that are disaggregated and that have more proximity to the students and their circumstances, are really the battleground from everything I've expected. And similarly, if you ramp that up to a policy level, we work hard in our research team in Strada to evaluate whether campus-based learning, Arizona State University has a Work Plus program and dozens of schools in doing that model, but it needs evaluation to see if it really works and delivers outcomes. The University of Texas system has a Degrees Plus an industry credential program evaluation to see, does that really indeed change employment outcomes and career trajectories, right? And so that evidence to give certainty to leaders who are are careful stewards of the resources they have, and then to persuade policymakers. The line of, success has many owners and failure is an orphan. If you have some success, everybody's a part of it.
Exactly. So this is what I think the room really wants to know. How do you see the future of work-based learning in the next 5 to 10 years, particularly with the rise of AI and automation?
We actually, just in the same employer survey, we asked about the impact of AI on their hiring. And the myth has been that it's disrupted and been hard. Employers actually net increase in hiring based on AI. We were so surprised we didn't publish the findings. We're doing another survey that starts next month with greater detail and granularity, just to be bulletproof on this notion that actually the economic downturn and entry-level hiring always suffers when there's an economic downturn, and that AI needs and how is that changing it. So with regard to work-based learning, I have two things that I think really will be the future if you want to think broadly. And that is, so many of our students are working and need to work and are having valuable experience. What can we do to intentionally create value for them in their future aspirations and careers in those experiences they are already having, rather than displacing or asking them to stop? So these Design Your Life courses, right, that have been a kind of a fad across some of our maybe more elite institutions where you have resources to think you could design your life. What if we have a seminar, a credit-bearing seminar that says, you're working here, I want you to go talk to your manager, I want you to talk to 3 customers, I want you to have these intentional experiences, write them, come back, present them, share them in community, be supported in doing that, but learn to build social capital where you are, in addition to continuing to build up and strengthen those things we can control and do on campus. But how do we extend off campus? Now, with regard to AI, the reality is learning how to use AI and apply it in real settings is going to be the key to that. And so rather than running away and say they don't need me anymore, it's they need me, and I'm better prepared than 50-something-year-old Dave Clayton to come in and write code on your, right? My grandma used to say she was 50 years old with 30 years of experience. So.
I love it. All right, so since numbers are so convincing that college graduation correlates with higher earnings and higher state revenues, why don't we advocate for states to give a lifetime tax credit for college grads?
You know, there's actually some work that's taking place. The state of Utah is looking at this income, the sharing of the cost, the affordability, where those who invest in that bond, in that social progress bond, would get a proportion of the state tax revenue back to them. So this notion of, are there other models in a climate of scarce funding and in a climate where employers want trained and qualified workers and talent pipelines, are there other ways to do this that are not predatory or burdensome on students, but provide, like, we used to have a social contract, and now I think it's a social IPO, right? Like, what's in it for me? How do I get in on what's good? And so how can we leverage those forces and those self-interests of employers and those who want social impact investing to create and support those pathways? So again, I think the ISA model kind of went out and got pulled back, and people still continue to look at how can we do this in a way that's responsible and constructive.
Gotcha. Okay, so can we talk about the disconnect behind the understanding that families and employers have about the value of higher education and what we hear in the media?
Well, what are the worst words to say? I'm from Washington and I'm here to help. I work in our Washington, D.C. office. And we just had a little snow a couple weeks ago. You may have heard about that. I often remind people that the same people that cover our national politics also cover our weather, and it's a little overblown quite often. The reality is, just like AI and just like value, it's something that attracts attention, and there is real crisis. But underneath it, I think if we go to the certainty and the combination of both data and stories is, again, where the antidote is what we're doing and how we're solving it and what works and what's doing. It's hard to break through with that, and that becomes more, to me, of a grass tops communication. Who are the people in my community and the parents and the student communities where we're certain that they understand what we're doing. The general public is in a very different space, and it feels much more like it's institutional confidence and political ideology than it is about the substance of those realities. When you get people who are in the education consumer mindset, am I choosing, have I been there, I've been there, they believe. And again, that question about do you care more about educating students or making money is the one that's still is the dagger in my heart. What we've seen in this same survey that'll be coming out is that those education consumers don't want to hear the word ROI. They want to hear predictable, transparent pricing, tuition caps, guaranteed costs, all in, apples to apples. They want to make informed decisions. So trust is no longer, trust me, we'll do what's best for you. Trust is, I'll give you everything you need to know to make the choice that's best for you. And so that's how I believe we'll restart to restore trust is that demonstrating that we trust you, students and families, and we're giving you everything you need to know to have predictability and clarity on that.
All right, they're depending on me to keep it going, all right? So I'm going to fire. It's time to go fast. Are you ready? Okay.
You want me to go fast?
Yes. Okay, now, the benefit is huge. The benefit is huge. 15% greater with paid internships. Do you have advice on how we get there? You talked about some states. Call out some names. I'm going to make you go fast. Let's go. Let's go.
I think intermediaries who help small and medium enterprises are the most important thing.
Okay, great. All right, regarding the perception of colleges making money and between the percentages of students leaving with debt, talk about that.
Let's fix it.
Let's fix it. Okay, got it. Is that's all? Okay. All right. What is the biggest problem with getting work-based learning going on campuses?
Career everywhere. It can't be siloed in one place. I think the degree that everybody on a campus understands it and builds it in and talks about it becomes part of culture. And then you have wonderful leaders building partnerships with community employers and operationalized solutions. Nobody needs to be persuaded that it's important. They want an operationalized solution of plug me in, how do I do it?
Gotcha. I appreciate you tolerating me rushing you. Okay. Confidence in graduates from employers seem to have increased with recent memory. What have you seen driving that improvement?
Yeah, I don't know, but we've got another survey going out next month.
Okay, we did something like that already. All right, we did something like that already.
You're good.
Right. The importance of work-based learning, students' futures. What do we do to increase? Do you think that we're at a point where the importance will only continue to increase? And how do we as a community here with the boots on the ground help you?
I think it will continue to increase. I think the important thing is to not lose sight of the benefits of a well-rounded liberal arts education while you're doing that. That it's an and, not an either or, and helping students understand that, communicate it. When we look at employers, what do they want? They want critical thinking, teamwork, leadership, project management. They want those enduring abilities, but they want you to be productive fast and to start and to stand out in a talent pool. So we need the and solution.
Gotcha. All right, so tell us a little bit, and I'm going to summarize a few all in one. Tell us a little bit about right now in this moment, once we finish this conversation, what do you mostly want us to take away from the information? You've given us some things to feel hopeful about, right? Let us know what you really, really want us to take away as your community and your partner.
Can I answer once as a psychologist and once as a researcher?
We'll take it all.
Good. I think if you go and look for ways in which wherever you stand, you could think about solutions that integrate a pairing of education and employment. Whether it's curriculum design, whether it's counseling, whether it's mentoring, but how do you do this in a way where it's an and, that we don't think about them in silos and leave it up to the students to figure out how to connect them. We're doing that everywhere all the time. As a psychologist, I actually thought about this morning. I wanted to ask each of you to be a Harvey Neufeldt once today, once to one of your colleagues, to go see them and acknowledge them as Chancellor García did. Just say, you're doing this, and it means a lot to me, and it gives me hope. And once for a student, could be a nephew, a niece, a family member, a neighbor, or somebody on a campus setting, but it becomes personal. And we have numbers, and they guide us, but it's really the hopes and dreams. And the scarcest thing we have is human capital, human talent, human beings that can fulfill their potential. And you do it every day. And just think about it today. Send a text. Even while I'm talking, you could send your text.
So you're sitting next to a person that they say would never go to college. So Ellen and I have that in common. Thank you for asking everybody to be like Harvey. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Dr. Clayton and President Johnson Eanes. Don't you agree they really have given us a lot to think about and to apply to our efforts in advancing social mobility? So again, another round of applause. Thank you. So building on those ideas, we have invited key partners in this work to record 3-minute quick pitches on how they're affecting student outcomes in very real, tangible ways. We want to ensure that all of you receive practical takeaways to consider and to put into action. The first quick pitch is from Dr. Beth Manke, professor at Cal State Long Beach, who shares best practices from her campus regarding paid internships.
Hi, my name is Dr. Beth Manke. I'm a professor at Cal State Long Beach, and I'm the co-founder and program director of the Long Beach Community Internship Program, LBCIP. Internships are one of the strongest pathways to career success and social mobility. But for many students, especially first generation and low income students, access to paid, meaningful internships is still out of reach. That's why programs like LBCIP exist. LBCIP launched in 2021 to create an equitable access to paid one-semester internships with nonprofit organizations and city departments right here in Long Beach. Students don't just get placed. They receive professional development, tailored mentoring, an academic internship course, networking opportunities, and a $2,000 stipend. Since launching, 206 students from 43 majors, many of them Long Beach natives, have completed more than 20,500 hours of service, contributing over $823,000 in value to our local economy. This spring, we're celebrating our largest cohort yet, 65 students, and the impact is clear. Over 90% of students report stronger leadership skills, clearer career direction, and meaningful ways to apply classroom learning to real-world work. Students tell us, this program changed how I see my future. It expanded what I believe is possible with my degree. It gave me confidence, direction, and purpose. And perhaps the clearest indicator of economic mobility, more than 45% of interns receive job offers or referrals to jobs after completing their placements. LBCIP is widely recognized as an effective model for advancing economic mobility through collaboration between higher education and local organizations. But here's the reality. LBCIP and programs like it succeed despite limited infrastructure. We rely on temporary funding, borrowed staff capacity, and the overwork of faculty and staff who believe deeply in the program mission. Economic and social mobility, especially for our most vulnerable students, cannot be treated as optional. If programs like LBCIP disappear, it won't be because they didn't work. It will be because we failed to make lasting commitments to the structures that support them. This is a moment for clarity and for bold action. We need to invest in programs like LBCIP, in the infrastructure that makes them possible, and in systems that ensure student opportunity isn't dependent on overperformance or goodwill of a few staff or faculty. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manke. We are now going to pause for a brief break, so let's take 10 minutes. We will reconvene at the top of the hour for a stellar panel on the future of workforce and economic mobility. Thank you, and see you back at 10 a.m. Pacific Time or 1 p.m. Eastern. Thank you. Thank you, and welcome back. I hope you all had a chance to stretch, grab a coffee, or engage in some meaningful reflection during our break. Our next guests are joining us from across the country. We have assembled quite the expertise on the topic of the future of workforce and economic mobility. Joining us are Xavier de Souza Briggs, Senior Fellow, the Brookings Institution, moderated by Scott Carlson, Senior Writer, The Chronicle of Higher Education, Dr. Will Del Pilar, Senior Vice President, the Education Trust, Dr. Pamela Padilla, Vice President for Research and Innovation at University of North Texas and co-chair of the Board on Higher Education and Workforce for the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and Shayne Spaulding, Senior Fellow of the Work Education and Labor Division at the Urban Institute. Welcome, panelists, and Scott, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm Scott Carlson from the Chronicle of Higher Education. I'm a senior reporter there. I'm also the author of the book that came out last year called Hacking College, which is really about social mobility and how you help students set up opportunities after college and how you help them really sort of gain agency in college and really realize what they're doing there. And we think that sense making is a big part of what allows students to become successful. I want to introduce the panel here. We're going to go down the panel. I'm going to have you introduce yourselves. You would be better at introducing yourself than I would be introducing you. Tell us who you are. Tell us a little bit about what you do, where you are. And then this is sort of the icebreaker question, which is, if you're in charge of an institution, given all the things that are happening right now, I mean, we're at a really distressing, anxious time. I think a lot of things in society and in education are being sort of thrown up in the air right now. And it's not clear how things are going to come down. But this is also an opportunity where things are going to come down and things are going to change. And it's an opportunity to change things for the better. So if you were a leader of an institution, what would you grapple with right now? Where would be the place that you would start to make changes? Pam?
Thank you so much, and thank you again for inviting me to this really wonderful symposium. And so I'm Vice President for Research and Innovation and Creativity. And so at the University of North Texas, one of my areas that we work on is really listening to, seeing the students and thinking about the work that we can do to support them, not only within research and innovation, but also listening to what their needs are. And so that would be one of the major things that I would look towards, is listening to our community members, listening to our partners, and really providing assurance to them. In terms of the work I do, it's really across the nation, sort of gathering expertise and working on mentorship.
Okay, so it's sort of like a listening tour in a sense. Beth?
With getting ideas. Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. Good morning, everybody. Is this on? Yes. Good, thank you. I'm Xavier de Souza Briggs. I'm a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution in Washington. A couple of things I'm working on that connect with this most directly right now is, number one, how do we positively shape the future of work in an AI-affected economy and world? How do we shape the future we want, not just hope for the best? And number two, how do we ensure that all regions across this country can grow and be dynamic and be inclusive as they grow? And the issues that we're here talking about, of course, are a very important piece of that puzzle. And there are so many regions still left behind and still struggling. So this is a deeply felt need in states across the country. If I were leading an institution right now, I'm going to cheat Scott and talk about two sides of a coin, kind of squeeze in two for one. This will build on what we've heard from the wonderful speakers already this morning. Number one is work intensively on what Dr. Clayton called that culture on campus, making this normal and exciting and creative, and something that's associated with excellence, frankly, and not as something that's thought of like in the old days as kind of zero sum. Either you're academically rigorous and serious, or you're quote unquote, vocational and career oriented, as though you can't be both. We need to get past that, and the sooner the better. And the second thing is the outward part. We've heard it referred to again and again so powerfully already this morning, but we see it in our research at Brookings all across the country, and we see global examples of it all the time. And that is, engage with those leaders, not only the individual employers, but for an institution like the CSUs and for many others across the country. Those alliances and coalitions that are really changing the conversation about economic growth in this country. They're modernizing it. They're breaking the mold too. You want to be in those conversations, and you want to be seen as an asset in those larger efforts to make sectors grow, to make the region vibrant, and not just produce a wonderful talent pool, though that's an important piece of it.
Great. Shayne?
Good morning, everyone. So great to be here with you all. My name is Shayne Spaulding. I'm a senior fellow at the Urban Institute. Urban's mission is to bring research and evidence to inform change makers like yourselves, but policymakers, funders. And so my research focuses on workforce development, post-secondary education. I've been in the workforce field for 3 decades now, and I've been on different sides of it. I've been at Urban for about 13 years, but I was at CUNY for about 5 years, overseeing workforce programs, and it was great to be on the inside, and now having that be the focus of my work. We focus on workforce development that prepares people for quality jobs. That's our main focus, and whether that's through any kind of pathway, apprenticeship, higher education, looking at the full pathway to a good job. And I would say what I would change, I'm seeing this theme about work-based learning, internships, paid internships, of course, and I wish everyone could have a paid internship. But I think what I would do is think about the spectrum of work-based learning and how that needs to happen throughout a person's trajectory to a job, starting in middle school and high school and beyond. And so how in communities can we collaborate so that it's not one entity and one person going to each employer to say, can you offer an internship? How can we do that in a more coordinated way? And so I think that's what I would do, is work with my community partners to create a more coordinated system.
Great. Will?
My name is Pilar. I'm Senior Vice President at EdTrust in Washington, D.C. I've been coming to this conference for, I think, 10 years since it started. And so I continue to come to this conference because I believe in the value and the importance of social mobility. At EdTrust, we advocate to remove barriers for low-income students and students of color from early childhood through higher education. I lead our higher education work, where we focus on affordability, student supports, and we focus on pathways. And so a lot of the things that we think about in terms of the barriers that students face, affordability, pathways, the necessary supports to ensure that students make it to the end, are a lot of times the things that we invest the least in. And so we focus from a policy level at the state and federal level to try and remove those barriers to ensure that students have an opportunity to get to whatever it is their goal is, if it's a bachelor's degree or the PhD, that they have the opportunity to get there. If I was at an institution, thankful I'm not, so I want to start right there. But if I was at an institution, I think I would begin to engage in the practices that I think remove those barriers that we often think about. And so when you think about, for example, I know the CSU has engaged in direct admissions. I think that we should be opt-out policies. When you look at the research on opt-out policies, especially around retirement, when people have to opt out instead of opt in, they're more likely to take advantage of them. And so I think we should be putting opt-out policies in place. And that's why I like, for example, FAFSA has a high school graduation requirement, right? So everyone completes it. You don't have to go to post-secondary, but at least you've done the form, and now you know what your options are in terms of financial aid. And I think the same about admissions. And then I would be thinking about what are the intentional pathways. We talked a little bit about around dual enrollment last night. I think that lots of institutions are engaged in dual enrollment as a way to try and increase enrollment, but I do think that there are opportunities to design those pathways in ways that provide value to students and then provide pathways into post-secondary that lead hopefully to a meaningful credential. And so I would be thinking about how we partner with key high schools, how we partner with key community colleges to offer every student in our service area a direct admission seat, either to our institution or to a 2-year institution, to build that pathway either to a 2- or 4-year degree.
Great, great. So let me just jump off of some things. We were talking a little bit about partnerships here. That's a great place to start, Will. And I think what I want to talk about is partnerships with the employers, because Xavier, you were talking about that, and Shayne, you also talk about that as well. So something we talk about in Hacking College is the vast world of hidden jobs that are both within a college or university, sort of these backroom jobs that are in the HR department or the bursars department or what have you, but then also this vast world of hidden jobs that is in small to medium-sized employers that actually surround colleges and universities that are in cities. And many colleges and universities really focus on the big employers because that's the way that you can scale some of this work. But I would ask you, maybe starting with Shayne and Xav, and then anybody else from the panel at any point can jump in. I want this to be a lively discussion. How would you improve some of these relationships that institutions have with some of these employers, and how would you expand those opportunities? How do you start to make these relationships rather than being sort of a one-to-one, hey, can you offer an internship for us,
I think when you're talking about small and medium-sized businesses, it's very hard to scale. And so thinking about the role of intermediaries, I think, is really important. So within sectors, I mean, we have sector-based strategies with some good evidence around the effectiveness of creating opportunities for workers. And so trying to build up intermediaries and working with intermediaries that can bridge those relationships with businesses and provide support to those businesses so that they're able to offer the kinds of work-based learning opportunities, they're able to support entry-level workers. So I think that is definitely a key here.
Could the university itself act as an intermediary?
I think the university itself can, but I think there are examples of both, of the university itself or within a region, an independent entity acting as that kind of intermediary.
Two things I'd love to add. I completely agree with Shayne. Number one, if we think about what universities have hosted in the past, it's many things, right? But one of them, just to throw it out there, is it's often institutions of higher ed across the country that host the federally funded small business development centers, for example. We actually don't have a lot of evidence on the performance of those things. Some are strong, some are not. And that's a part of that evolution I was talking about. Economic development itself needs to evolve in this country. It can be a lot smarter, a lot more effective. But that is to just remind us that, yes, universities have played host, to directly offering things like technical support, room to learn a new market, to explore it together, things that are harder for small and mid-sized enterprises. It's some of the reasons, by the way, that our country lags in productivity for firms of those sizes when compared to other advanced economies. And then there's this, the value of an intermediary of whatever kind, of where it lies. Just it turns out that it gives small and mid-sized employers an opportunity to problem solve with each other on a whole host of things. So you get together around one question, and then you find out there are 4 or 5 more that people are anxious to come back together and keep working on. And that has a lot of spillover benefits as well.
Yeah, I do wonder if there's an opportunity for, just ways that I've covered colleges and universities before. One thing I think about all the time is the Sustainable Cities Initiative that was out of Portland, Oregon, and how the university there was trying to form partnerships with a local city to open up opportunities for students to do things. And I wonder if there is more of an opportunity to lean into that practical role that you can sort of build out the practical experience that happens within the classroom. I mean, we're talking about this career mentality that has to be incorporated across the institution just generally. What do you think are some of the barriers to that career service mentality that is there? I think it's a career ecosystem is what some folks are talking about, right? Go ahead, Pamela.
Well, so as a faculty member, I'm a scientist. There's certainly the need to be able to communicate to everyone within our university community that they have a role in that, which includes the faculty. So while teaching your courses, that may not come to mind. So I think that becomes a culture shift. And then second, I want to add on to the idea that something that we're very interested in, we're beginning to stand it up, but empower our students to not only think about themselves within a career at a certain place, but they are bringing in new innovative approaches that could benefit those employers. And so thinking about how do we teach our students to be innovators and entrepreneurs and really supporting that structurally within the system, whether it's through our research enterprises or whether it's through the classroom. And then there's an additional value besides the workforce person that goes into a company. And that's something that I think that most universities, we're definitely looking at it, and many others are as well.
I mean, I think that's really interesting because in Oregon, one of the benefits they found was that the students would come to these, unlike paid consultants who are kind of trying to come up with the pitch that they think is going to get them the next job. The students were coming in with these wild ideas that the businesses really loved, that were sort of outside the box. And it also allowed the businesses and the civic organizations to sort of distance themselves too. If the ideas were too wild, they could say, oh, it's just student work, right? You know, it's not real. But students do bring a sort of enthusiasm to the job. How would you address some of these issues in terms of that career ecosystem, changing that? Shayne, I think you might have some thoughts on that.
I mean, I've been in this field for a very long time, and we still talk about how hard it is to engage employers. So I don't know if there's a single solution here.
What about engaging though the culture on campus?
The culture
and making
on
that
campus.
change?
Yeah, I mean, it is in setting, in leading by example, right? I think that's one way. I think professional development is a key aspect of this, and we've seen this in other areas where that is a real opportunity to give staff and faculty the tools they need. And I think there are ways to integrate careers. The paid internship is the ideal, I mean, from the discussion this morning, but there are so many ways to bring a career focus to the campus, and it can be bringing employers to the campus. I mean, we see there's just really a range of employer engagement activities. So bringing employers to the campus, letting employers talk to students, bringing students to different workplaces. And so just sort of the range, the huge toolbox that you have, tapping into all of those different opportunities.
I often hear that it's really hard to engage employers, but I do wonder how hard we really try at the institutional level. We want to engage folks, but we want to engage them on our terms, where they come and listen to what we have to offer in our curriculum, instead of us taking the stance of listening to what their needs are in terms of employers and how we can adjust curriculum in order to meet workforce needs. The other thing I'll say, I think, so often we really think about career advising and we make this drop-in service. So there's a career center, the student comes maybe at their last year to do a resume, a mock interview. That needs to start much earlier. We can't start having students think about their career in their senior year. It's like starting to think about what college I want to go to when I'm in my senior year of high school. It's too late at that point. And so we have to begin this much earlier. There is some research that shows when you engage students in the first year in career advising and you begin to expose them, they actually, retention rates are higher and they're more likely to graduate because they see the connection between their curriculum and the future job that they want to do. And so I do think we need to be thinking about systems, number one, that engages students early. And I'm going to say the thing because I think that's why you invite me. Faculty are not the best advisors, career advisors. They are entrenched. They're great at understanding their research and the literature base, but they're not great at telling you what these hidden jobs that you're talking about may be in the field. I never had anyone through a PhD program talk to me about a career in policy. It wasn't anything anyone told me. What I was told in the PhD program is how to be a faculty member, right? And so there wasn't a professor telling me, oh, you should look at policy opportunities. I think you'd be great in this role. They're like, no, here is what you have to do to become a faculty member. So when we engage faculty as advisors, we may be getting what we paid for, which is subpar advising from a career perspective. And so we do need to think about what does professionalization of advising look like, and what does it look like to have high quality advising.
I do think some of the cultural resistance to some of this comes from this notion that, among some faculty, if we're talking about faculty, but others, this notion that, a college degree isn't just sort of, you open up somebody's head and just dump a bunch of skills in and then push them out into the world, that there's more of this sort of turning a person into a fully formed human being is a big piece of it, right? But there is this huge discussion right now about the importance of skills and skills-based hiring and so on. What do you make of that as a solution to some of the problems that we're talking about here, that this skills first or skills forward sort of orientation? Xavier?
I'd love to tackle that. I mean, on one hand, I've spent a lot of time engaged with and looking at the work of the nation's leading organization driving the skills-based hiring movement, if you will. It's called Opportunity at Work. They too are engaged now in thinking about AI as a wave, if you will, sweeping into all of this. So they're trying to keep up to date as well. No, on one hand, I think there's been a quiet revolution there that we ought to celebrate. I mean, lowering artificial barriers and focusing on the real competencies required to do work as opposed to credentials as a proxy for that, let alone, which school did you go to? Is it a named, quote unquote, school? I think that makes for a more democratic, small d, inclusive country and economy, and I think we should celebrate that. We've also seen it, by the way, in government hiring. A huge number of states, regardless of their politics, adopting skills-based hiring policies. That's only good. That's my first thought on it. And the second is just, I was referring to it earlier, is that either or, that binary that we have to get past. It is culture work. It takes persuasion. I think it's going to take naming what Will did, that, we're often not trained, for example, in PhD programs to be utility infielders who can do absolutely everything. That's just the truth. And so we need to be serious about ensuring excellent career advising, whatever that looks like, and not settle for mediocre. And I think we also have to have the intellectual conversation, because we're talking about intellectuals too, and say critical thinking is vital and valuable, and it is a lifelong investment. But we have treated it as though it's an either or, and we need to get past that. And I think some of the leading models in the world, for example, in Switzerland, show that it is entirely possible to do so.
Can I jump in? Because I think I'm hugely skeptical. Because I think I'm just going to cuss. I'm not going to cuss. I don't think I am hugely skeptical. I've been hearing about skills-based hiring for a long time, and digital wallets and all of these things that employers talk about. But who we want to have skills and who we want to have degrees are different people. I was at an event with an employer, and they're like, if we're so focused on skills, do students even need to graduate high school? Who are we talking about? Like, we're not talking about everyone in the population. We're talking about low-income students. We're talking about folks who have traditionally been underserved. When we say they don't need a degree, what they need is to have certain skills, right, for a job, not for a career. And so I'm hugely skeptical. I've been hearing this in, like, the work-based learning space for a long time, and I don't see any advances. So I have a son who chose not to go to college, and that was his choice. He's tried a different path. Good for him. Bad for me. But we went through, he did all of these trainings. He put out for 1 year, resume, job application, apprenticeship. And even in the apprenticeship, they wanted 1 year of experience. And I was like, if he had 1 year of experience, why would he need the apprenticeship, right? And so if we're talking about skills-based hiring, but we're demanding experience and we're demanding a credential of some type, and then what skills do people have to show other than the credential or the degree?
I think another piece of this too is, what is critical thinking anyway? Like, what does that actually mean? I think is a vital question. Pamela, you want to say something?
I was actually going to talk about critical thinking, but I do come from the STEM workforce background, so just giving that caveat in terms of you certainly need higher ed if you were going to go into any of the work areas and career opportunities within STEM. And there are mosaics in terms of across campus on how engaged departments to faculty are with industry and listening to their needs. Engineering would be a great example of where there is their ear to the ground and having those partnerships with industry as it benefits both institutes, whether it's in academia or within industry. In terms of the students, there's a couple of things that we can do in terms of providing more beneficial, not just from a faculty member's point of view, sort of perspectives, and that is really embracing bringing in your alumni into and knowing where they're going. And so that's one thing that we're doing certainly at a graduate level. Where are our students that have graduated in the last 5 years? Which companies did they land at? How many are within the Dallas-Fort Worth area, within Texas? How many can we start engaging with and bring back to really talk to the students that are graduating and providing that network between alumni and our graduating students. And so that provides a different experience than any faculty member or program on campus could. And then in terms of what the employers certainly look for is being able to adjust to the needs of companies as they change. And so there's a component of critical thinking to be able to adjust, to be able to be fluid in the way that they think, and be able to not only move forward with the work that is at hand at moment, but what could be in 2 or 3 years. And that's something higher ed does provide our students, is to be able to think critically, be able to be flexible in their mindset, and be able to learn and grow. Be lifelong learners is something that I think we need to embrace within our universities, and that's who we provide as they get into the industries.
Sometimes as a moderator, you have to have ESP. Shayne, did you want to jump in? It looks like you want to.
Well, this is not exactly about skills-based hiring, but there's this move towards short-term credentials and, some changes in policy with Workforce Pell that are trying to drive towards short-term credentials. And I have similar concerns, which is that, one is I think, there are some short-term credentials that are good and a whole lot of them we don't know about, and then a lot that are bad. And I worry about people being driven to just build those skills and then they can't go the next step because we haven't built a system that allows for that. And so to me, I have a lot of concerns. I think it's positive that people can earn skills or credential and get a good job, but it doesn't stop there. So to the point about lifelong learning, so continuing to build that system for stackable credentials, I think is really important.
It was raised, so I want to talk about it a little bit. We were talking about apprenticeships, and on one hand, apprenticeships are, everyone's talking about them and how great they are and so on. They're just very limited in number and the uptake has been slow. I kind of wonder if the enthusiasm around apprenticeships is more around this whole idea of really that's sort of the model of how it should be, whether it's recognized by the Department of Labor or not, but this whole notion that you're going to have an employer that sort of takes you under their wing and that show you certain things. I mean, it's kind of this contract, the unspoken contract that employers had for a long time, that I had coming out of college, which was, I don't really know everything, but the employer is going to teach me some things, and then that's going to allow me to either stay there or move on. What do you think about that, and what do you think about this whole conversation about apprenticeships? Anybody can pick that up.
I'll start. I mean, I think on one hand, it's picking up on energy from a couple different directions, and we've begun to touch on them. Employers' sense of urgency, and yes, their choosiness. We have business cycles, of course, but they're concerned on a whole host of levels about having a workforce that's adaptable, that has the latest skills, et cetera, et cetera. They've also been rightly critiqued in California and all across the nation, not just for discrimination, but for approaches to hiring that are not inclusive for a variety of reasons, and are now, of course, subject to algorithms and AI-based searches and screenings, and happening very rapidly, coming on very quickly, and we're still trying to understand those. And that classic issue, though, how do I figure out if someone can really do the job? How expensive is that going to be for me? How much work do I put in the upfront kind of recruitment, and screening, versus an early period of proving yourself or what have you? So apprenticeship, speaking to the choir now, but apprenticeship is a structure in which to do all of those things. And if we think about the world's single most developed and studied model, the Swiss one, the engagement with employers, it's never one and done, it's continuous. Employers are engaged in helping to design curricula. The economy is dynamic, so it has to be ongoing dialogue, not a once a decade thing or something like that. But also they've worked really, really hard at what Shayne talked about to see that you're not tracked into either, a kind of highly applied but not very mobile, not very adaptive skill set and credential, or a more academic and advanced one, but you can move back and forth and can stack degrees, in effect, over time. We would have to do a lot to move to all that. We have a lot of work to do, and it surely would look different, than it does in Switzerland anyway. But that's a piece of what I think the apprenticeship hunger, if you will, is picking up on. Can I throw out a number? Sure. Just to name one? My colleagues estimate the nation's going to need an additional 32 million infrastructure workers over the next decade alone. That's the population of Texas, 32 million. Half of that is just to replace incumbent workers who are aging out or otherwise leaving that particular workforce. Apprenticeships and other forms of work-based learning are fantastic for many of those occupations. So it's a real problem, to your point, that we don't have enough funded slots. We don't make it possible for enough folks, especially if they're first generation or low income or disadvantaged on any level to have a real shot at those kinds of careers. We've also made them seem like they're uninteresting. You know, if you want a good job, it's an office job. It looks like this. It's not being a line installer, an electrician, or what have you. And many of those folks can make 6 digits in many parts of the country. And yet we've not celebrated those, vocations as much as we could have.
One of the things I just want to say, one of my concerns about the registered apprenticeship pathway is that it's become the selective admissions of opportunity. And so when you have limited spaces, the employers then become very selective in who they're choosing. And so they're not choosing people who may benefit the most. They're choosing the person who will benefit them the most, right? So it's not who's going to benefit from the training, it's who's going to benefit me the most as an employer. And so I'm really concerned that with limited space, what we've become, registered apprenticeship have become is selective admissions. And that's what it's become. The other thing that one of my concerns is always who pays. And employers, we always talk about how people need to have skin in the game. And most registered apprenticeship are paid for either by the state or at the federal level. When do employers have to put some skin in the game if we are building their workforce? If education is building their workforce, if a registered apprenticeship is building their workforce, then when are they going to have some skin in the game in terms of an investment beyond placing that person that you're going to get some labor from and probably make some money off of? And so I think ultimately, I'm really concerned about the selective admissions aspect of registered apprenticeship. And then I think employers have to have some skin in the game. Other than providing a spot, I think that they should be flipping part of this bill so that people can have opportunities so we can make them more scalable.
Apprenticeship or not, do you think employers have pulled back from that social contract of, providing that first step for students coming out of college? Do you think that they're more stringent or strict about what they're expecting to see from those? And what do you make of that in relation to the low employment rate for college graduates right now that everybody's talking about? Anybody can answer.
We see it in some of the data that folks who are applying for what used to be considered an entry-level position have, years of experience. And part of that is it's really, really challenging right now in terms, especially if you're in higher ed or if you're in education or if you're in research. I know some folks coming out of PhD programs, the faculty pathways kind of dry up right now. There are not a ton of opportunities in the faculty pathways. And so I think that when you have the type of layoffs and rifts that we've seen at the federal level, especially people with research training, other training, what you have is people who have 10, 12 years of experience applying for jobs that used to be entry level for new PhDs. And so I think that it's really challenging right now in terms of the job market if you're searching. I've had lots of people who reach out and say, I'm thinking about a career change. I was like, don't do it. Stay where you're at. If you have a job, stay there. You have to wait until there's more opportunities that I think open up. And so I think that it's a challenging time. And what we see is that there are folks with more experience now for applying for positions that used to be considered entry level.
Pamela, you want to say something?
Well, I'm more optimistic. I like to think of things as, what are opportunities? And so if we are in an economic downturn, where are the opportunities? How can we grow our opportunities? And that's what I really want to emphasize, is that something that we have an obligation to our students is to think about. It's not just a track from A to B. It's not linear. It is a way in which you can develop your own business. We have students that are doing that. That is a huge amount of social mobility component if they feel empowered to be able to do that. I've seen applications where students are going to med school and they've already had a startup. That's amazing. How do we learn about that individual and how we can at least seed those type of mindsets across, so that those that may not have felt empowered to do it say, yes, I can do that. I see someone who looks like me that has done that. And so I think of it as let's look at these gaps and start thinking about opportunities. Look for where those flowers are that are growing within the desert and seed those across other places. That's what we have as an obligation and as leaders.
So I agree with both Pam and Will, if that's possible. And I 1,000%.
I work in DC. I can't be an optimist.
No, I 1,000% share your concerns and also your optimism, Pam. I want to talk about money for a second. I used to help run the White House Office of Management and Budget, so I had a chance to think about some really gnarly money problems that were really contested. This was in the Obama administration. And I think we're just not nearly creative enough, about resource models. This was said a couple times earlier this morning, and I just want to draw it out for a second. To Will's point, completely agree. It's time to think about employers' skin in the game. It is very possible. There's a new model called talent finance. It's not the student loan stuff that we have, created such problems around. It essentially is a structured way to have several partners, stakeholders, hold each other mutually accountable. Sounds pretty good. Very outcome driven. And it reduces barriers, especially the upfront ones that can affect the most disadvantaged students. Super quick story. I was talking to the economic development director of a state in the industrial Midwest. There's all kinds of incredibly advanced stuff going on all over the region, of course. She says to me, we created this new model curriculum. We did it with the employers. We know the kids of every background can do it. We see the numbers. They suggest we can see a bump of $30,000, $40,000 a year right away and upward mobility from there. She looked worried. I said, what's wrong? That all sounds amazing. She said, I can't figure out how to pay for childcare and transportation and the other things that enable students. And talent finance is a way, it's just a label created by a nonprofit that has piloted this model and is using it in a number of different states, a number of different industry sectors. The money is malleable. So it's unlike that money that tends to come from state legislatures, right, with extremely narrow, rigid purposes. And all kinds of other problems as well, and the seesaw of appropriations from one year to the next. One year it's super important, next year it's the desert. You're starving the program. And we've all seen that movie too many times. We need to be thinking about these other ways of fueling the critical things that enable success and also structure accountability into the equation in ways that we haven't had in the past.
I'm seeing the folks off on stage left readying the hook to pull us off stage. But since I started with such a difficult question, if you're running a university, what would you start with? I'm going to end with a similarly difficult question. Unfortunately, I just go down the line. But we didn't talk much about AI, which is, seems silly. But if you could go down the line, specifically, how do you think the emergence of AI will affect this conversation about social mobility? Where do you see the biggest impact happening with that, either negative or positive?
Well, in STEM, I'm very positive about AI in many ways. I think actually within campuses, we can utilize it to be able to remove some of the more routine type of work. We use it a lot within research, obviously, and at the forefront of developing new AI technologies. There's obviously cost in terms of the our resources within our Earth, and that's something that's paramount that we would need to think about. But with that, if we can solve those issues and really push to solve those problems, then there's going to be spurring of new innovations. And so I look at it again as an opportunity to provide new ways of thinking about developing new opportunities, developing new technologies, solving really challenging problems. And the only way we're going to do that is if we come together from different disciplines, as well as with a promise that we have to do this.
So briefly, two quick thoughts. One, we are already seeing the emergence of labels like AI-proof jobs. Sounds pretty good, right? People are anxious. It's misleading, of course. It's a little bit simplistic, but it's just a reminder, I think, a healthy one. It really is going to depend somewhat on the sector and on the nature of the work. Those infrastructure jobs I talked about are going to be very different for the foreseeable from a bunch of the others. So that's number one. That is going to matter. And number two, this is just essential literacy now. It's already become that. So we ought to think about this, I would argue, the way we did basic computer literacy 20 or 30 years ago. Just a fundamental part of being equipped as a modern worker is understanding what is AI, what are some of the things it can do, why does it need to be guided, why is it not quite the formulaic thing like a spreadsheet, because it's obviously not that. That's just table stakes now. It's equipping all young people and people making career transitions with that know-how.
Yeah, I'll say that I think a lot about navigation, career navigation, and as you said, that it's not a linear. People's path is not linear. We've set up these ideas about straight career pathways, just not the way it works. And I think people need support along the way. So I think there are a lot of opportunities to leverage AI because they need people support. How can we leverage AI so that more people can get people support? I'm not trying to take away the advisor, but how can we make give them a tool to have them better support students?
I'll just say I do worry a little bit on how it's going to impact the opportunity for those work-based learning opportunities that Dave talked about. A lot of times we talk about AI as like an assistant. And so if you're using AI as an assistant, you know what you don't need? An assistant. And so that could be an internship, or there could be a grad student opportunity. Like you would have grad student run models. If I could do it using AI, then I've eliminated the need to have that. And so I do worry around limiting or taking away opportunities for those entry-level positions to maybe get your first experience in one of those pathways that maybe leads you to the hidden job you didn't know about.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the panel. And thanks to everyone here.
Thank you so much to Scott and to our panelists. It's obvious that ongoing collaboration between industry and higher education is absolutely vital. And I hope that you are feeling inspired, excited, not so pessimistic, but optimistic like Dr. Padilla about the future of our nation's workforce. We heard a lot about collaboration and working across sectors and industry, whether in higher education, the business sector, the community organizations, or the K-12 space. The next two quick pitches highlight successful collaborations impacting student success. Please roll the videos.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tom O'Brien, Associate Dean in the College of Professional and Continuing Education at California State University, Long Beach. When we talk about workforce and economic and social mobility, one question often comes up. How do we ensure that higher education is not just a one-time pathway to a degree, but an ongoing experience that leads toward real career opportunity? We believe the answer lies in strategic partnerships, accessible credentials, and a clear focus on the skills that matter in today's economy. That belief is at the heart of a system-wide initiative launched in partnership with Google, the National Association of Higher Education Systems, and Coursera. Together, we're offering CSU students free access to Google career certificates in high-demand fields like data analytics, business intelligence, cybersecurity, and project management. These are not theoretical skills. They're job-aligned competencies that employers are actively seeking. What's especially powerful about the initiative is how it has been implemented. The CSU Chancellor's Office has played a critical role by activating faculty champions across campuses, ensuring that these certificates are not add-ons, but integrated into students' academic and professional journeys. At CSULB, we've taken that foundation and built a campus-wide system of integrated support. Through partnerships between academic colleges, our Career Development Center, alumni networks, and the College of Professional and Continuing Education, we've been able to reach a remarkably broad audience, current students, working adults, and recent graduates alike. Since the program launched in early 2025, more than 1,000 Google Career Certificates have been completed by CSU learners on our campus. Each one represents a student who has gained new skills that can translate directly into workforce opportunity and ultimately economic and social mobility. But the impact doesn't stop there. These partnerships have opened the door to deeper collaboration, including new coordination between CPACE and university research and development. This is helping us to better understand and respond to the professional needs of alumni as they transition into a rapidly changing labor market. This work shows us that higher education's role is not just confined to the classroom. It extends throughout the lifelong learning of our community members, from early exposure to career pathways, through degree or certificate completion, and into continuous upskilling for further advancement. When universities act as connectors, linking people with education and industry, we create systems that don't just prepare students for work, but for career mobility, resilience, and long-term prosperity. That's the promise of this work. And it's a model we believe can be scaled across campuses, systems, and communities. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Ryan Alcantara, and I serve as the Interim President and CEO of the Parent Institute for Quality Education, also known as PIQE. PIQE is based in California with a national footprint, and we have nearly 40 years of experience partnering with schools and communities to engage, empower, and transform communities. We develop programs that provide empowering information, skill development, and support systems for under-resourced families, communities of color, English learners, and immigrant families, benefiting approximately 2.4 million children throughout PIQE's history. On the ground, PIQE delivers multi-week, culturally responsive family engagement programs, most notably our signature family engagement program. Families learn how GPA is calculated, how to navigate A through G requirements, how to access honors and advanced placement courses, how college admissions and financial aid systems work, and how to advocate effectively for their children within the school system. This work is grounded in more than 2 decades of inquiry and evaluation. Over time and across multiple studies, the results consistently show that the PIQE programming is effective at closing equity and access gaps. Most recently, in partnership with San Diego State University, we completed a longitudinal academic impact study published in 2025. It found that 91% of students whose caregivers completed PIQE programs graduated from high school, and 56.6% enrolled in college. For English learner students, graduation rates were 20% higher than state and national averages, and nearly 40% of them entered post-secondary education, roughly double the national enrollment for Latino students. Taken together, these findings confirm that sustained, culturally responsive family engagement reduces attrition, improves academic outcomes, and expands educational and economic opportunity, particularly for students who are most at risk of being pushed out of the educational system. PIQE helps families understand the academic opportunities their children have a right to receive and equips caregivers to advocate so students are not overlooked and families understand the choices students have. Advancing students' academic progress is core to the work that we do, but we also empower families to be engaged in their communities. The key message is that meaningful, culturally responsive family engagement drives tangible and transformative educational and economic outcomes. When families are informed, supported, and respected as partners, students thrive and communities benefit across generations. To learn more about PIQE, visit us at pique.org.
Fantastic. Please keep up that great work. Now it is time for our final panel, a presidential conversation on making social mobility core to institutional strategy. The leaders from these 3 institutions have truly embedded social mobility into the very ethos of their campuses. Ask any staff or faculty member, and their mission is crystal clear. So what does this look like, and how is it accomplished? This panel will be moderated by Dr. Sarah Villarreal, Chief of Staff at Cal State San Marcos. Joining her on stage are Dr. Ellen Neufeldt, President, Cal State San Marcos, Dr. George Lewis, President, Clayton State University, and Dr. Corey King, Chancellor, University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Dr. Villarreal, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Trustee Fong. It is an honor to be here with all of you moderating this presidential conversation on social mobility. Now, I understand the 3 of you go way back, and that together you've been at the forefront of the social mobility movement. Not only have the 3 of you helped lead and shape the national conversation around social mobility, but I know that you don't just talk about social mobility as a value, but you have embedded it into the DNA of your work and your institutions. So with that stage set for our conversation, let's dive in. I want to start by taking us back to spring of 2018. And I know in higher education that can feel like just yesterday and also a lifetime ago. To help you remember, Big Bang Theory was the #1 show on television, and Black Panther was breaking box office records. So as I understand it, in spring of 2018, you and some of your colleagues gathered to learn together with experts. President Neufeldt, I'll start with you. Can you tell us about that first social mobility convening?
Yes, and thank you so much. You know, when I think back to 2018, and I was a vice president at Old Dominion University, and we were creating this gathering around social mobility. The experts came quickly, but I'll say, as we were trying to fill the room with attendees, I had to call colleagues and ask them to come. And more than one said, okay, I'll come for you, but you've got to tell me what social mobility is, and then I will come. And I think at one point you could say that we probably had more experts that were excited to get to be there to share. They've been trying to, I think, shout in their own way from the rooftop, and maybe more experts than actual participants. But the learning there was like a workshop. And I was joined by these two colleagues here on the panel. And the idea of this is, in that first symposium, and so many since, is I think we all left, and I hope that's what continues to happen, with just really understanding and laying the ground for what this meant to really incorporate in our work, the way we lead, and within our institutions. There was a lot of conversation around policies, practices, that we had to make sure this was embedded at the federal level, the state level, within systems, and most importantly, the understanding of leading where we are, from where we are. And in those, from those days in 2018 when, yes, I still watch The Big Bang Theory, from those days, one of the things that really struck me as we were looking at this particular symposium in 2026 is the colleagues I'm joined with here were there. None of us were presidents. We all went home along with probably 28 other people. We all went home with this. And now this is part of our institution's ethos. It's the vision of Cal State San Marcos, and I know the mission and vision for the other two. And I think it was such a special moment for me when Chancellor King, who had ghosted me for a while for some unknown reason, texted me one day and showed me what he was doing as a new president in Wisconsin, Whitewater, around centering this. Or when Dr. Lewis invited me to be a keynote speaker and allowed me to make fun of him from stage, and what was the mission of his strategic plan. So the idea that coming and being a part of this is the learning we do together is so important, but what we do with it matters so much, and that it is embedded into the culture of what we do. One other thing I want to mention, or that I was even encouraged to mention, is we had lots of people from different areas, but we had a lot of folks that work on rankings. Now, I heard the Chancellor, and I do share with you about the idea of rankings. And we had Bob Morris, who invented the U.S. News rankings there. He was at the center. And after that symposium, he came back to me and some of the folks that I worked with at the time and said, next year there will be a social mobility ranking in U.S. News. That was really huge. I didn't understand the power of the conversation. I didn't understand the power of the gathering. He also told me openly, and said it openly, or I wouldn't say it here, that he had not been connected to some of the conversations we had, or some of the student panels, and that had a big change and profound impact. So it was about each of us, what we do individually going out in our world, and for what collectively we did in that first symposium, and what we've done ever since. For me, I have mentioned this many times before, for all of us, this is very personal. Well, I am not a first-generation student. I have lovingly heard my father's name mentioned many times, and I've got to thank Dave Clayton. My parents, both of them, their families came over to Canada from leaving the Soviet Union, escaping the Soviet Union at the time. My grandparents actually came. And my mother's family, I've seen ratings where they talk about the different farms they lived on to exist, basically traveling and moving from one farm to another that would house them. And so they worked on those farms until eventually everybody owned their own farm. But for my father to leave the farm and go to college was not thought of as something that would happen or do. And somehow miraculously, really miraculously, he got his PhD. I'm just going to mention, he got his PhD as an international student in the United States. And I was the firstborn in the U.S. And my family. I just want to emphasize that. And because he went to college, because he did something that nobody had encouraged him to do, I had the fortune a generation later of being college president. Many of you have many more compelling stories, but this one is one that has framed for me, especially in this work, to help me understand what my parents did, what my grandparents did, that allowed me to be sitting here, to allow everyone that comes behind me and my sisters who all have their degrees to have degrees. And their lives, social mobility is generational. I am living proof of that, as I know we all have the story. But that is my why. That really, in that first symposium, helped me frame. So the idea of really where we can take it and what we've embedded in our institutions now and our work as presidents is really an important part. And I hope when everybody leaves the webinar today, if it's your first time or your fifth time, you can think about what you're going to lead in social mobility.
Thank you, President Neufeldt. Chancellor King, can you tell us about your memories of that first convening and what it set in motion for you?
Yeah, I appreciate being here, and we'll talk about the ghosting stuff later on. I'm a first-generation college student, so this space gets emotional for me, y'all, because my parents were just incredible people, and they're both gone. They both have transitioned. So thinking about me as a first-generation college student, I grew up in Miami, Florida, in a place that we call the Hood. Anybody know what I'm talking about? The Hood, right? The Hood. So it was a community type of space where you had to look out for each other because you were in the Hood. Both my parents didn't even graduate high school. One was 8th grade, the other was 11th grade. They were sharecroppers from Georgia. They were picking cotton. That's how they were making their living. So when they came to Miami, my mother was, we call it today maybe a maid, but they called it cleaning house. Cleaned house every day for about $25 a day for 8 hours of work. Dad was sanitation, garbage man, garbage worker. But we did our best to make ends meet. Mom always said to me I was her little president. That's what she called me. She called me her little president. So she used to say to me, your father and I got us into this situation. It is our hope. We're going to put everything in all of you kids to get us out. That's what she used to say. Now, that's a lot for a little kid to take in, but that's what Mom said. And so when I graduated from college and got my own place, I remember going to the mailbox, and there was a letter from Mom. And I opened it up, and it was her utility bill. And she said, please pay this. So I was like, Mom, what are you doing? She says, well, what did it say? I said, it said, please pay this. She said, then just pay it. So, okay, I'll do that. So the second month, it came, and another letter, and I opened it up. It was a utilities bill, and it said, please pay this. Okay, Mom, all right, I got it. So the third month it came, I opened it up, and it said, you know what to do. So at that point, I just continued to pay it. She sent it. I didn't realize what was happening until Ellen invited me to this space. And I realized that I was a part of this social mobility, that I was providing a path forward for my parents and for myself to be in a better space than what they had known and their grandparents. And so when I came to this convening, it was really the first time that I was like, wow, I understand this space, and now I realize I'm not alone. There are other people who are in this same space, and there is a terminology or something around this space that speaks to who we are and what we do. And so as a result of that convening, I was like, yeah. So how do I pay forward? How do I make sure now that what my parents afforded me, I can afford to others, to make sure that it becomes a way of life for us? And so that's how I'm here.
Thank you so much, Chancellor King. President Lewis, how about you? What are your memories of that convening?
Well, first of all, these two are extremely difficult to follow, and I have followed them several times. But particularly Ellen, I think she mentioned she asked some of her friends to come. I don't know if it was an ask. Those of you who know President Neufeldt, it's not necessarily an ask, but thank you for that, and thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'm still on East Coast time, so I'll say good afternoon to everyone. This is exciting for me to be part of what we're going to talk about today. That memory that I have from 2018, I didn't necessarily know why I was going, but once I arrived, I knew it was something special. And I wasn't familiar with the term, but I knew there was some connection between the term and what the outcomes were, and what I wanted to do as a professional. At that point, I was not a president. However, Dr. King mentioned earlier that it was personal, and so as I reflect back and think about how it was personal, this social mobility is personal. I'm not a first-generation college student either, but my parents were, and so my mother and my father and I had 2 uncles. So in my family, there were 4 people who burst through that glass ceiling, and 2 generations later, there are now 40 individuals in my family there's a handful of PhDs, there's several master's degrees, and there's several bachelor's degrees, just 2 generations out. So I am a recipient of the benefits of somebody going to college first, and somebody paving that way and giving that example of what it means to be a college graduate. And so I'll highlight some of those individuals. There are 3 Fortune 100 executives, just 2 generations out, and I'm talking about Verizon, and I'm talking of HP, those type of organizations. There are several educators, principals, etc. We have an architect, and as a result of all the work of everyone else, we actually have a college president out of that group. And so living through that, why would I not want the students who I interact with to have that same type of experience? It's I want to go tell it on the mountain that college is where you do need to be and where your life can be transformed, and it has an impact for generations. And I'm living it right now. And what's so exciting is now I get to be the president of an institution, and that's what our mission is. And I'll talk more about that later. But from that event, I didn't know that was going to happen then, but where I'm at right now, that is the mission of Clayton State University.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for sharing your personal social mobility stories. And it is amazing to hear how you were doing the work before we really had the language, and that you helped people understand that the outcomes mattered. So now we're going to move to the present. As presidents and chancellors, you set the overarching direction and focus of your campuses. So here is the question: how have you made social mobility core to institutional strategy, not just an initiative? And Chancellor King, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so at my inauguration almost 4 years ago, I did a couple of things in that space to kind of set the tone, right? The first thing I did was I said, my name's Corey King, and I'm Black. And my pronouns are he and him. and I set the stage for the community to understand that we are going to continue to embrace an inclusive space where people can come and they can find their journeys, and we will meet them where they are. That was number one, right? Number two, I wanted people to value the journeys that they were about to be on or the journeys that they were on and what's the importance of community, and to share my own story. And so I did that. At my inauguration, I had a picture of my mom and dad who have transitioned. And during my speech, I took out their picture and put it right next to me. And I invited them to join me in the spirit of the space to share this inauguration. And then the third thing was to set out this notion of being Warhawk bold. And for us to begin to lean in and to recognize that as a diverse, inclusive community, we have people from various backgrounds. We have first-generation college students, we had low social economic, right, students with disabilities, we had veterans, we had students with all different orientations and spaces. And so how do we collectively lean into that and say we ultimately have to do one thing, and that is we got to get these students across that stage. How do we speak to student success, right? And I realized in this social mobility space that there's this Wisconsin idea from where we are in Wisconsin, and that is to create, to develop students, to get them to graduate where they are critical thinkers, where they are problem solvers, and that's when I think about critical thinking, they're problem solvers, and the ultimate thing is that they're going to go into their own communities and they're going to problem solve. They're going to see the issues and challenges of their communities, and they're going to lean in, and they're going to collectively solve problems, and together they're going to rise up. And to me, that speaks volumes to an institutional focus around social mobility. And so, you know, a couple of things we've done to think about it on the university stage is, you know, you got to preach, right? What you preach is what you live, right? That has to be connected, because if students don't see that you're authentic and real, they can smell it a mile away, y'all. They can smell it. Student, when you're not real, the students know that, right? And so on campus, I share constantly my authentic story in my space for faculty, staff, and students. And that's important. And so, you know, we brought it to an institutional space. I'll give you an example. Someone mentioned dual enrollment. So in that social mobility space, we're leaning into dual enrollment. And we've launched an academy in dual enrollment, and we've done it primarily in the rural communities. And the goal for us in dual enrollment is that when a student graduates from high school, they also graduate with their 2-year degree. Bam, that's a game changer for us. And our campus is leaning into that. What does that look like for us in terms of that? So that's just an example of something we have brought into that's a part of our strategic plan. We've done a couple of other things that I can be here for another hour talking about plus. But those type of initiatives have now given UW-Whitewater, according to the Wall Street Journal, just a ranking, that we are now the #1 institution in Wisconsin for social mobility. And so, yeah, so to be in that space speaks volumes to this now institutional change. And then the last thing I'll say is we've created, you always talk about create committees and task force, but we have this committee called the Chancellor's Committee on Student Success that's led by the provost and the senior student affairs officer. And these two have to be the game changers, because if you don't bring the right people to the table, we can be our own barriers and our own failures for success. And so you got to bring people to the table who's going to move those barriers, make things happen, and focus on student success. And so we're doing that as an institution. And I'll tell you this, it's every day. It's an everyday process. So.
Thank you so much. President Neufeldt, how are you making it core to institutional strategy?
I think Dr. Lewis is a little jealous that he has to go last again, but I'll go ahead and take it. Just kidding. You know, our vision is to be a national leader in social mobility, and I don't mean that really around accolades or anything else. I mean that around infusing it into the fabric And that strategic plan came from the whole campus. The one thing I do want to say is I'm very proud of what I get to do together with my university. And I love that we do always acknowledge we have mountains to climb at the same time. Proud of where we are, and also understand where we need to go. When I got the opportunity to come to Cal State San Marcos, it wasn't about changing who this campus was. It was joining a group of like-minded mission people and the CSU as well. And at the same time, though, one of our deans said that we have really now framed this in a way. We knew what it was. We couldn't always put our fingers on where that was, but we have really framed this. And it's so important through that plan that it weaves through the institutional fabric. We have a social mobility case statement. We have the Stone Brewing Fund for social mobility. You know, once upon a time, people said you couldn't raise funds around that. We think about that in our building spaces. We think about that in our programs. Our faculty and staff live it in many ways and spaces and places every day. But it is important for me as the president, and borrowing your mic, it's important for me as the president to make sure that, you know, I am not only setting the tone, but I'm enabling what can happen and where we go. And that is really important. It has to permeate throughout the campus. And I'm so proud to be a part of a campus where that is a focus.
And I love this question because I can take 2 minutes to address it, or I can take 20. I'll try to stay closer to 2. But your vision is where you are at your best. But your mission is what you do every single day. And I think part of the question was, I think you mentioned, is it a where you can make it more than just a saying or a motto or a buzzword? And so our mission, if you look at our mission statement, our mission statement says our mission is social mobility. We transform lives through teaching, scholarship, and service. And that is it. And that's what we do every day. It took some time to get to that point. And so I'll be a little more, I guess, tactical or strategic and to talk about what that meant. So we went through a strategic planning process. It took an entire year. We engaged everyone. And I think our mission was social mobility before we identified it was social mobility, but folks didn't really know what to call it. And when we recognized who we are and where we want to go as an institution, it just fit. Someone brought the statement to me, and immediately I said, that's it. No committee, no nothing. That is exactly what our mission is, because the community brought it up to me. And so it was important for us to identify who we are and what we do every day. And that's why I feel like once we got to that point, it was an easy process to really embrace that mission of social mobility. When your student population is 80% underrepresented, 77% first generation, a family adjusted gross income of less than $29,000 a year. So when those students cross that stage, they go from a family adjusted gross income of $29,000 to immediately, if you're a nurse, 60, 70, 80, 90, or a dental hygienist, or whatever the career might be. And so when we looked at who our students are, the impact that we can make, it was a no-brainer that social mobility is our mission. It's a mission, but it's also measurable. It's an outcome. So social mobility is a outcome that you get there through affordable access to quality education, and you live better holistically, for a lifetime. That's how we want our students to live. But it's measured by how many students in your community are you educating? How many first-generation students are persisting and moving towards graduation? How much money are they making when they graduate? And so it's a phrase, it's a term, but it's measurable. Our North Star is to be the #1 institution in the state of Georgia for social mobility. I know, California's tough, so in the state of Georgia for social mobility. And that's what our North Star is, and there's measurable, there's metrics that can help us identify where we need to go, and the plan is put together to determine how we get there. So it's part of everything that we do. It's our mission. When you come on campus, you're going to see the signs. It's going to be a discussion in every meeting. Every time I meet with the foundation board or the alumni, that definition is right there. And so we really want people to know who we are and what we do, and that's how we bring it to the forefront.
Thank you so much. And I promise, President Lewis, you're going first this time.
Man, I'm not ready.
So that mission of social mobility, the big idea of social mobility matters, but practices are where culture changes. So name a specific practice that flows from your focus on social mobility. What does it look like in day-to-day decisions or operations?
I feel like I'm on a job interview. Give me a specific. Goodness gracious. However, and we've talked about, and I think the term was used throughout the day. We've talked about high impact practices, and I heard several high impact practices, and we talked about them. Our students need to have access to them. There was a slide that was shown earlier, and there was one word that was consistent. It was paid. It was paid internships. It was paid. I just described our student population at Clayton State Universities. The high impact practices, they're not a secret. The challenge is getting the students who need to engage to them. And so one example that I will share, we have a business internship. It's a business consulting internship, and it's actually modeled after a program at Yale University. And so we have students who work with our local business and industry, and they work on a problem, and they interact with the company, and then they provide solutions. And so it sounds pretty standard, but we had to go raise money so our students could engage in that process. Our students can't do an internship and not work. Average age is about 24. They have kids. They work, and life comes first. Even though education for all of us is so important, life comes first. And so we have to find a way that we can connect the students who are having some life challenges, not potential challenges, not intellectual challenges, but life challenges. How do we support them in their life challenges so they can have access to those high impact practices like the internship program that I mentioned, so they have that social capital when they interview for that job, that they're able to get the high-paying job and not just a job that turns into the career. So that's one example, but we do that for every high-impact practice. How do we connect our students to them? If you want to study abroad, that's tough. Well, you better raise money, and you're not going to go unless students are heavily part of that process, and we need to provide resources for that. It's challenging, but that's what we have to do as leaders to put our students in the right place to be successful.
Thank you so much. Chancellor King, you talked about dual enrollment. Do you have another one you'd like to share?
Dual enrollment was one, but two quick examples. One was internships. We found that students were not as engaged in getting into internships and what we call co-ops and those type of experiences, and was trying to understand why. And we realized it was because we centralized career services because it was convenient for our career service people, that they could collaborate and work together. And I was like, all right, let's figure this out. And so we decentralized it. Now we have career in every one of the colleges and areas, and it has made a significant increase in our internships. And we have a central 2 or 3 people that work in the office, but everybody else is decentralized among the colleges. That's a win. The second example was about barriers of students coming to college. And so when I looked into what are some of the barriers, most of our first-year students are paying almost $1,000 before they walk into the door, with fees and deposits and all of those things. And we're like, whoa, what is this? Because it was, people were in their own spaces. They were doing their own things, all these different departments. And so students were having to pay these deposits and fees along the way, and it came to be about $1,000. So we've eliminated a couple of those fees. We've eliminated our orientation fee, gone. We don't have an orientation fee anymore. We are now doing our housing deposit, and the housing deposit is once you get into housing, as soon as you open that door, we're going to credit your account. You're going to get those deposit dollars back. So trying to find those barriers so that students can have an easier pathway being on the ground. And I'll say this, everybody doesn't buy into it. So for me, there are spaces you have to say this, and I'll be clear. I'll say, this is where we're going. Tell me how I can help you get there.
So, Chancellor King, there was somebody I work with in the room that was grinning at me as you were saying that. I don't know if I've ever said it to that individual or not. I'm sure I have, actually. And I think that's such a key point to pick up on that. Some of the things that you mentioned are so important when we think of policies and practices, that we need to think about them with the end user in mind. So we've had a group that's gone through our administrative policies on campus. The person that was just talking about the other day said this is a blue ribbon practice, and I think they presented on it. But this was cross-divisional, cross-teams, because a lot of those policies live in our admin and finance area. And many times we haven't invited them into the party. And so they are right in that party going through those. And I think as you talk about holds and fees and all of those things in disparate places. So that's a really big one. I think about one example, and it picks up a bit on that dual enrollment. But this is kind of a model of so many things coming together at once. It's the idea that, I was taught early on that philanthropy was about some shiny thing over there. And there's I have some shiny things, so I'm not taking away from that. But the idea that we can have people invest right into the heart of what we're trying to do. We have a program we worked with our community on, and when I say we, many people smarter than me, on mental and behavioral health. So we have an undergraduate program, 3 years, it involves dual enrollment, and $10 million in philanthropy to pay for those internships in the summer. It's a big workforce shortage here, and then certificates are embedded. So when the student graduates, instead of being eligible for about a job paying $30,000 a year, they can get paid $80,000 a year because they're billable for insurance. This took people from this took everybody. It took, obviously, the leaders in that college and those amazing faculty and our dean. It took our leaders in academic affairs. It took our leaders in many of the support and inclusive programs around those wraparound services. It took people from everywhere coming together to say this was the model. There are so many other models, and I am going to be in trouble because there are so many great things happening that are represented in this room. But I use that example because it is about philanthropy. We talked about our admin and finance area being involved in this, our academic colleagues, our wonderful student affairs and inclusive excellence colleagues. It's everybody, and we have to come together to look for those barriers and programs to make sure that we are actually living what we say we're about.
Thank you so much. Those are wonderful points of pride and excellent ideas for everyone listening. So as we begin to wrap up, I want to zoom out and also to zoom in. No matter where someone sits within an institution, they can lead in this area of social mobility. So can you please give one piece of advice to someone who wants to advance social mobility on their campus? And President Neufeldt, I'll start with you.
I would say that it's always about leading from where you are. And I know that's easy for me to say as president, but I haven't always been the president. Whether you're in the classroom, whether you're in a support area, whether you are the accountant on a campus or a community partner, you can look at who's the end user, what is the outcome we're trying to achieve, And I think of back in my days when I was in different support programs, thinking about what are the barriers in the way we administer this. It can be as simple as Chancellor King was talking about deposits. Are we asking somebody to give money that obviously wouldn't afford it? Do we have deadlines for admission? I'm just going to say when you really need to have somebody. whether that's a counselor or a parent that can help you understand there's deadlines for admissions. Are all these policies and practices that we have in place, are they keeping people out? Are they bringing them in? And the people that are the experts are not the three of us. It is wherever you sit on the ground, moving that forward and doing what you have agency to do.
Thank you, President Lewis.
I don't know if I can answer it too much different than that, but I will encourage everybody here, as well as those who are online, to focus on being barrier busters. I think if you look at yourself as a barrier buster, leadership does not start with the title. Leadership can be seen in anything that you do, wherever you're at. It is your decision to try to find opportunities to be a barrier buster for your students. So lead where you're at. You don't have to be a president to do it, and everybody has the opportunity. And so I think this is an important topic that we are talking about today. It's creating opportunities and transformation for our students. So perform where you're at.
Thank you. And Chancellor King.
Yeah, when I became chancellor, I thought the first thing to do was have listening sessions with people so I could hear the community. And then I decided not to do listening sessions and just attend 500 plus events, programs, and meetings over a 6-month period. And just heard people where they are and started to pick up themes. And from that, it led to a campus conversation, right? And to me, I think it is important that you have a campus conversation and realizing in the space of social mobility that there are other people in that same space on that same journey who can join you in being champions of your campus. And that's faculty, staff, and students. So I would say reach out, listen, understand, but also know that you're not alone and invite other people to the conversation in the space.
Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your commitment to students whose futures depend on this work. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much, Doctors Neufeldt, Lewis, and King. Thank you especially for sharing your personal stories. Now, more than ever, it's clear that social mobility needs to be a core to any higher education institution's strategy and identity. As we bring this morning's symposium to a close, we've heard a powerful through line from Dr. Clayton's data on connecting education to opportunity, to national perspectives on the future of workforce and economic mobility, from practical applications at a campus and community level, and finally, to presidents who have made social mobility the core to their institutional strategy. Together, these conversations underscore that advancing social mobility requires sustained collaboration, shared learning, and bold, values-driven leadership. And that bold leadership starts with you. It starts with you. I bear witness to this work every day. I get to see the amazing outcomes at our students' graduations and how they lead our world. I see the dedicated people that make this possible every single day. The faculty, the staff that go above and beyond, as well as the community partners that walk alongside us to make sure our regions and communities thrive. I hope your minds are brimming with new insights and ideas to implement from today's symposium. I know mine certainly is. And with that in mind, while our webinar programming concludes now, we invite you to stay connected. More exciting updates will be coming in the very near future. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to our symposium hosts, Cal State San Marcos and President Ellen Neufeldt. We will see you next year in February for the 2027 National Social Mobility Symposium. In closing, together we are turning social mobility from possibility into pathways and promise into progress. Thank you very much for being with us today. Be well. Thank you.